Today's story is pretty light, about a serial killer who can see the number of people someone is going to eliminate. During the story, he meets a girl who is the daughter of a serial killer just like him. His target was a guy who wanted revenge against the girl, and he fulfills the victim's last wishes. At the moment that girl went insane, the number of people she was going to eliminate shot up to the hundreds, so she also became his target, but then it dropped back down to one again. He spared her life and let the girl walk with him. After that, they lived through all sorts of craziness together, like Batman and Robin, only as serial killers. Let's go step by step, starting this story from the beginning. The citizens start getting scared of a serial killer who has already reached the mark of about 20 crimes. The crimes were committed in the same metropolitan area, but there's no connection between the victims. The police suspect they aren't specific targets and are chosen without distinction. At the same time, the police consider the possibility of it being a copycat. And all this starts when another crime is committed in the metropolitan city. Investigating this case, the woman feels a lot of headaches and exhaustion. Yun Yohan, her co-worker, notices and takes her to a quieter place. In a restaurant, the woman just needed a bit of space. Her friend recalls that last time she said the same thing and ended up feeling sick. Another colleague understands her since it's been only a few weeks since an incident in their lives. Sayla starts remembering this traumatic incident involving her family. In the morgue, she had to confirm the identity of the deceased. She remembers that Uni's face was pale, and she always complained about it being yellowish. She also had a number carved into the back of her hand, which Sayla peeked at under the bedsheet. This was evidence that the crime was committed by the number killer, the most famous criminal in the world today. Yun Yohan comments that she was the 30th victim of this serial killer. The other colleague says it's already past 40, but there are imitators too. One of their friends thinks the world has gone mad with so many robberies and violent crimes. Yun thinks just locking them up doesn't solve anything and that they should be executed. Sayla says that won't bring victims like Uni back to life. Every time she goes out in search of material, she realizes there's no point in responding after it's already happened. She thinks they need more fundamental solutions and to identify future criminals. After finding them all, she believes only executing them can prevent their future crimes. The reporter says that's what's been on her mind lately. After the group dinner ends, her friend Yun Yohan calls the girl over. He walks up to Sayla and asks her to get home safely and seek good people to be around. He says this is because people who could help her might also be close by. From atop a building, a sinister masked man watches the two talking. Reporter Sayla goes crazy because none of the victims have anything in common in age or gender. The only thing that connects these cases are the number-shaped wounds carved in. They aren't sure what the numbers mean or even if it's the same criminal, especially since there have been several murders on an unprecedented scale. However, some people survived and weren't just victims of the killer, becoming witnesses instead. When the 21st case happens, the woman who survived thinks it's just a coincidence. She talks to the reporter and says she's happy to simply be fine and alive. That woman and her lover had passed through an unusual place on that specific day. Only she came out alive, which made her think it was a coincidence. Another witness who survived was a tough guy who then starts telling his story. He says the avenue wasn't normal because people didn't use it, leaving the place empty. That's when he noticed there was no one else around. There was only one man walking behind them in a strange way. The moment he saw that masked guy, he already knew how things would turn out after that. The reporter wonders why only these people survived. Why did the number killer let her survive? That other woman who survived says that she even heard a voice and already knew she wouldn't survive. But the guy came right up to her, called her number one, and then said it wasn't her. For investigative reasons, the police didn't reveal the number of victims. This makes the reporter beat herself up for not having much information yet. She wonders how he keeps committing crimes in such a stupid way, not hiding bodies and leaving witnesses behind. She goes back to her office and notices that her inbox is completely packed. Then she sees a very strange email and gets all frightened. She calls someone and says she's a local journalist and wants to interview the person because of the email they sent. As soon as she gets the interview, she starts heading to meet the person. But the masked guy is already on the street watching her. Meanwhile, she's all paranoid about finding more material for her report. Suddenly, she stops walking because she feels something behind her. And indeed, the masked man is walking right behind her with a weapon in his hand. The reporter starts remembering the account of one of the survivors who was in a deserted street, along with what he described about feeling the monster's presence behind you. As soon as she pieces it together, it's too late. The guy is already running after her. He grabs her arm and tries to knock her to the ground. He manages to because she loses her balance. Then he tries to grab her again, but the woman's companion shoves the criminal to the side. Yun Yohan, the blonde guy, manages to rescue the reporter and run away with her. The two run from the monster, and he says they're near his workplace where they can hide. Yun asks if that masked guy happens to be the numbers killer. Then he suggests going somewhere crowded for now to escape the monster. Soon after, they see an alley that could serve as a shortcut to the main street. But as soon as they get there, They see it's a dead end, and they realize they're not on the main street. At that moment, Yun Johan reveals himself as the criminal and attacks the journalist. Then the other masked guy arrives and stands beside him. The guy complains that he runs too fast. After attacking the reporter, who was his friend, Yun says he did it in the perfect spot because there are no cameras. The girl wonders why he did this. The criminal thought that once again he was going to mess it all up and ruin everything. Yun Johan starts carving a number into the woman's skin after attacking her, doing this so the police will confuse him with the real numbers killer. Johan tells the guy who helped him that he can do whatever he wants, but once the woman is gone, she's his. However, the reporter doesn't stop fighting to survive, and the crazy guy starts saying creepy stuff to her until someone appears behind them. Behind them, the real masked numbers killer shows up. With glowing blue eyes and a scar under his eye, the man sees the world differently, and some people have a number above their head, saying he found number 1 and number 4, and that they are destined to suffer this crime. 3 hours later, a woman who survived says she's very grateful to the numbers killer. She claims the numbers killer saved her life and her family's. The reporter says the victim she witnessed during the incident was an ex-lover. However, the woman says she's being generous as he caused chaos and is a terrible person. And that person was a victim of the numbers killer, and she was there when it happened. She could have been in extreme danger, but still insists the numbers killer saved her life. It's at that moment the reporter understands what that survivor meant about the man of numbers. Now she understands who this numbers killer saves and who he eliminates. At that moment, he reaches the 2 victims destined to be eliminated. They start to get scared and grab a pipe when the numbers killer gets close to them. Right then, a hook knocks the pipe out of the hand of the man who attacked the reporter. Next, the numbers killer begins violently attacking the chosen one. As soon as the lunatic hits the ground, the numbers killer says the task is done, eliminating number 1. Then he starts approaching number 4 with a blade in hand. Pointing the weapon, he says he's a target to be eliminated. Yun Johan, the blonde, can't even react from sheer fear. Seeing the man with a huge scar on his face and a mask charging at him, the numbers killer immediately starts attacking the blonde again, who tries to fight back. He even manages to take the knife from his hand for a moment, but the numbers killer is fast and lands a hit on him. After that, he gives a hard kick to the guy who had gotten up behind him and tried to attack him from behind. The woman starts piecing things together in her head and understands why the victims have nothing in common with each other. Besides, he's able to dodge the web of investigation for a very long time. The recurring behavior described by surviving witnesses is about him acting and predicting what's going to happen. The survivor she spoke to earlier talked about what the police found in the bag of the guy who was eliminated. It was gasoline and a burner, because the guy who was eliminated had planned to start a fire. In other words, if she hadn't crossed paths with the number guy in front of her house, and if he hadn't eliminated that bastard first, her entire family and her house would have been set on fire. Back to the event at hand, the blonde guy is on the ground pointing a knife at the number guy. Without thinking twice, the masked man starts beating the guy and lands several hard kicks. An absurd thought comes into the woman's mind, and she can't get it out of her head. She comes to the conclusion that the number seems to predict the future and what criminals are going to do. On top of that, the numbers he sees are the number of crimes that person is going to commit. After eliminating the guys, the masked man starts recording what's happening. He reports the date and time, and that number 4's name is Yun Johan. And by eliminating him, he was able to save 4 people that guy was about to send to the grave. He then asks if the guy has any last words before sending him away for good. If he has any small hope or unfinished business, and says he can leave a message behind. He assures the man he can make it happen as long as it's within his limits. However, the blonde doesn't want to leave any last words. He just keeps swearing at the masked man. Even so, he says to let certain people kick the bucket voluntarily. The masked man doesn't quite understand but asks if those are the blonde's last words. Before he can say anything else, the masked man ends his life. He begs to be spared, but the masked man doesn't think that's possible. He then sends the guy to the moon and finishes him, saving the reporter's life. Meanwhile, the other guy starts crawling away to escape. However, before doing anything else, he carves the number 4 into the blonde's body. The woman asks if he's not going after number 1. He says number 1s aren't targets to be eliminated, because many times they eliminate someone to save someone else. Even so, the reporter thinks it's wrong, even if it's someone he's going to eliminate in their lifetime. She knows it's a kind of logic that's hard to accept under normal circumstances. In this person's circumstance, she understands the rule. Then she stands up and asks to help the number guy with his tasks. The reporter had always wanted to do this, identify criminals, and judge them according to the rules. That's why she says she can hide him in the shadows, and if he wants to have his voice heard, she can spread his word. She insists she can help the man because of her profession and her own desires. Lowering his mask, he asks if she has the same mindset about predicting murders. He says she'll be quick with her words because of that. He starts recording and asks if she has any last wishes or final words. The girl doesn't understand anything, and suddenly his eyes glow. The number 12 appears above the reporter, revealing she would eliminate many people in her lifetime. And he goes on about how all human life is equal, and in this chaotic world, that's what keeps him going. He doesn't know who the good or bad people are, nor what kind of person deserves to live or die, nor what kind of person can help the world more. Since he can't tell the difference or judge that, he just needs to erase the numbers that appear in front of him in order to save as many lives as he can. So to save the people who deserve to be saved, he has to eliminate some. On TV, the case of the serial killer from the city of Daejeon starts playing. The number serial killer case continues to inspire imitators to commit their crimes. The police received a report of a man and a woman who were eliminated by the number guy. They say the circumstances involved a conspiracy to commit a crime. It involved one of the survivors who revealed all of this. It was announced as a copycat crime case of the number killer. The two criminals were trying to cover up the crime they were going to commit by blaming it on the number guy. Inside the cafe of one of the survivors sits the number killer himself, having a coffee. In the report, a specialist says it's the first time so many crimes have occurred randomly on this scale. In the country, something like this hadn't happened since 2012 in another city. Meanwhile, the criminal studies the diner's menu and begins placing his order. Besides carefully choosing his meal, he also picks his seat by the window in a calculated way. The customers inside the restaurant, the workers, the people coming and going, along with the people walking down the street and a station he can see through the window. All of this so he can have the entire city's people within his view. That way he can see the numbers above their heads to know how many people they will take out. Seeing a one on the street with the number 2, another with the number 4, he has always excluded number 1 and wonders if these are the only targets left in the area. His priority when choosing a target is simple, always going for the highest number and the ones that change the most over time. When the woman comes to bring his giant order, the man is already gone to carry out his tasks. Suddenly, we see several tattooed, shady-looking men inside a bar, yelling and causing a ruckus until a waiter comes to complain about the noise. They throw a bottle at the wall and start fighting the waiter, causing chaos and not caring about the other customers there. One of them congratulates another tattooed man for being out on parole. He says that punishment for being under the influence of alcohol and drugs nowadays is harsher. He asks about a high school girl the man got involved with, and even after giving her money, she wouldn't stop talking trash to him. He admits he was wrong to drive drunk, but now it's over and there's nothing he can do. He also says he can't make the woman's legs grow back after the accident. He thinks the girl should stop complaining since she survived, even if scared. Then he starts talking about how he scared the girl's father, the very man he caused the accident to. After that, they say their goodbyes and the man heads home. While driving drunk, he starts getting closer to people, about to run them over. But in the back seat, the numbers guy tells him to turn the car and presses a weapon to his neck. The tattooed man swerves hard and ends up hitting no one. Then the masked man tells him to turn the car and keep going until they reach the outskirts. Above the tattooed man's head, he sees the number of 5 people he would have killed by running them over. But the number keeps blinking and fluctuating because it's going down now that he avoided the accident. Even so, within 24 hours or 10, he will end up killing someone. So he tells him to get out of the driver's seat and move to the passenger side. He asks the tattooed man if he has any last words or wishes, because he's the genie in the lamp and will grant them all. Then the numbers guy starts counting sarcastically, and as soon as he reaches the end, the man tries to lick him with the knife, but the guy grabs his hand and starts driving the car. Seeing that he couldn't land the lick on the blonde, the masked man hits his head just to make him pay attention. Then he starts striking him, sending him flying. When it looks like the car is going to crash, suddenly it starts moving normally. That's when we realize the masked man took the wheel and starts recording what's happening, saying that the fluctuating numbers above the guy's head disappeared, but it's still 5. Even if he stops the crime from happening, the moment just gets pushed back and the number doesn't really change. So much so that the blonde goes for the number with a knife to commit one of the crimes he was destined for. But it comes to nothing because our anti-hero takes him out quickly. He already expected that, and soon after, the number 5 disappears because the blonde tattooed man is gone. After completing his mission, the anti-hero goes back to the coffee shop. At that moment, the woman who had the number 1 above her head starts walking by carrying some heavy boxes, until she trips and the boxes begin to fall everywhere. Suddenly, at that moment, the number above her head turns into 26, which shocks the numbers man. However, he saves the girl by grabbing her arm. She immediately thanks the man with a scared face, while the employee there tells her to be more careful next time, and he wonders what that was and about the number that appeared above her head. He starts describing her features and is sure she was the girl who only had the number 1. He wonders how that number grew so much, since they normally don't change once they've been set. She starts apologizing and says the man must have been surprised because she suddenly got a headache. Our anti-hero writes down her name from her employee badge and sketches her face in his notebook. The employee at the place puts eye drops in her eyes for some reason. After having a lot of trouble getting the drops in her eyes, she wonders why they're burning so much. The manager suggests it might be because of very dry eyes or staying up too late. She even offers her a pack of those eye drops, which the girl accepts and thanks her for. On the news, they're still talking about the imitators who tried to cover up a crime using the serial killer. This makes the manager wonder if this show she had seen before is airing again on TV. And the girl starts paying more attention to the specialist's words about how cases like this haven't happened in years. They also show charts comparing the two cases. After that, the employee with the number 26 above her head says goodbye and leaves. She heads to another part-time job, which is sad because she's a young girl who should be in school. She works a lot and can't even talk about herself, keeping everything bottled up. In the middle of the street, she starts feeling unwell and focuses on breathing to deal with the anxiety. As soon as she reaches the front of a store, a guy starts yelling at her and slaps her. He tells her they can't be late and make these mistakes. Even though physical things like that are serious, she has to endure this temporary pain. She works much more than someone her age should, all for better pay. And sometimes when she can't find the energy to keep going, she gives herself a few slaps. Then she starts pulling at her mouth and forcing it, and if she keeps being stressed, she'll just end up smiling naturally. At that moment, someone recognizes the girl in the restaurant and asks what she's doing there. The man knows her from school and also from kindergarten. She starts getting very stressed as they also talk about the number guy's crimes on TV, until he says she's the daughter of Moji Hayan, the woman from the case similar to the number cases. The girl completely snaps when she hears this, and everyone at the table starts commenting about her mother. The guy says he's surprised to see her after middle school since she suddenly disappeared. Suddenly, the girls start making fun of her and the guy, asking about a boyfriend. At that moment, her vision starts getting strange, and she starts seeing numbers above people's heads too. She runs outside, freaking out, crying, and screaming, trying to understand what's happening to her eyes. That's when, on top of a building as always, is the number guy. Seeing this description of the girl matches what he noted down, her sneakers and hair, and remembering the moment she fell down the stairs and several numbers started flickering. Wondering who this Moji Hayan is, suddenly he starts remembering a case from years ago about a man being arrested for his crime. Everyone was asking if he regretted it and felt sorry for the victims' families, but the guy kept silent. Two women were watching this on the news while the man was being taken away by the police. This man was the serial killer with the highest number of victims in the entire country. The little girl asked her mother why her father was on TV. At the time, Ji Hainan was only 8 years old. Her mother was arguing with someone on the phone while the girl tried to distract herself, complaining to her boss about the late payment she was chasing after. A year passed, and the little girl lived as if she was always half asleep. Or maybe she just denied the facts that were right in front of her eyes. Until at 14, she was being bullied at school, with everyone wanting her expelled from class. Other parents complained that she might take after her father's example. One girl came up to her one day and slapped her in the face just for being stupid. Also, the guy was talking about her older brother who was in college and ended up underground, but they also said she seemed to adore her younger sister. This man interviewing Ji Hai asked if she was close to her father and if she knew anything. The girl said she didn't know anything because her father left the house when she was 6 years old. After that, even before he was arrested and appeared on TV, she barely even knew his face. She also didn't know where he was or what he did with his life. This man told her she should be careful with what she said to others, as it might sound like excuses. The girl started to freak out when he said that about excuses, because she hadn't done anything wrong. After all, it wasn't her fault for getting close to girls or for being born the daughter of a horrible serial killer. The man said it wasn't a matter of right or wrong, but that girl had lost someone because of her father. He was trying to warn her that this would happen a lot in the future and that she should try to avoid those situations. The girl, not knowing how to express her feelings, thought that maybe reading more could make it possible. At that moment, only one name kept echoing inside Ji's head. Mo Hyun Cheol, the name of her father, the greatest serial killer in the country. That name was an eternal curse she would live with forever. She looked at happy families and parents with their children, filled with anger. While numbers began to appear above their heads, similar to times on a clock, Jay rubbed her eye and realized it wasn't a dream, trying to figure out what it was. She understood the trick when she squeezed her eyes to focus and saw the numbers as an optical illusion. At first, she thought it might be the time for something, because of the color and arrangement of the numbers. But seeing how large those numbers were, it didn't seem like a time. Jay grew frustrated trying to figure out what those numbers meant and even thought it might be a rare disease. Suddenly, Baek Min appeared and asked if something was wrong. The girl said it was nothing and teased him for being younger, saying he wouldn't understand what she was going through. He even joked about her rude attitude since she was the one who had called him there. handing her a hand cream and saying it was for her birthday the next day, complaining that she didn't even invite him to do anything, even though they had been friends for 10 years and could celebrate somewhere. The girl began to cry a lot because of her friend Beck's attitude. She cried so much because she wasn't used to receiving affection, only insults and hits. She was going through a lot of messed up things in life and explained to him what had happened at the restaurant. Her friend remembered him and felt bad that she had run into him, the worst of all people. All this time, she thought she had dealt with it and moved on in the only way she could. But every time those old memories resurfaced, she felt sick and couldn't do anything. She asked if he remembered that family who gathered to try to expel her from high school. The mother even said she knew it wasn't her fault and that not all children turned out like their parents. Even so, a child growing up without emotional stability and with a father in prison is hard to guide onto the right path. Given the financial struggles, she wasn't fit to receive a proper education and would end up taking the easy way. That's why that mother asked the school why they let the daughter of a criminal attend a school full of children. That's why she always tried to prove to herself and others that she would never become like her father, trying to live happily with a healthy mind, independent and fully grown as an adult, that she wouldn't become a criminal like her father or anything like that. Her friend tried to understand why she wanted to prove that to others if she already knew it wasn't true. She said her friend was still practically a child and wouldn't understand that the world works this way. Bake teased that he even fell asleep in the middle of the conversation because he was such a baby, and she laughed. She thought it was time to have fun now, since her birthday was the next day, to prove she was the happy and healthy person she wanted to be in her future. He suggested going to a cafe with board games to start having fun. G teased him, saying he was terrible at online games. To prove her wrong, they went to a LAN house and played. Then they went to several other places to have fun and eat to make it a good birthday. But out of nowhere, one of those yellow numbers appeared in her mind. Above her friend's head, those numbers began to drop as if counting down. Bake feels a strange sensation as if he's in a bad mood and senses that someone is following them. Until suddenly, a person passes by them, and it seems there really is someone spying on them. It looks like there's a group spying on them with a camera and following them as they move. The daughter of Moji Hayan appears on TV after a few years. The gossip reporter claims that she's living happily, and the video that was sent to them ends up revealing that she went to a street full of clubs and bars. After the video ends, they don't know if the pair went anywhere else, but still, they're teenagers getting into trouble. The gossip reporter says another funny fact is that the video was filmed on November 17. In other words, 2 days before was the memorial for the 13 victims of her father, and now she's the same age as the little girl who kicked the bucket. The man says the world is very unfair because while some don't have their daughters anymore, others have fun and live after all that. Trying to justify himself, he says she's not wrong for trying to go out with someone and live her life, even if she's the daughter of a serial killer. He just thinks it's a funny situation and says the lesson of the day is that God doesn't exist. The reporter's YouTube video already reaches 1 million views, and many people agree with him. Some people are disgusted, saying she'll follow in her father's footsteps, have kids, and get married. Other idiots also say they were classmates of some victims, and that's why they feel anger toward the girl. While her friend is heading home, he sees some people causing trouble. On top of that, police are scolding a man who was making a scene in the street. Other people in the YouTube comments complain about the fake news, saying she might not have the DNA for psychopathy. And some argue that it's biological and that you end up like your parents. At that moment, the boy enters Ajumione's house, Ji's mother. It's been a while since they've seen each other, and he visits her home. Meanwhile, Moji Hayan is in her room reading all the YouTube comments, feeling very sad. She asks if he hid his face well enough not to be seen by paparazzi. After all, if he's filmed entering there, he'll get into big trouble, and people will say they're living together. Hayan is very upset with people because they don't know anything about her. Jai is certain it was those old classmates who followed her and took those photos. Bake says he understands how she feels, tells her to calm down a bit, and says she doesn't even need to read those idiots' comments. After all, they'll disappear soon enough when there's no more drama for them to stir up. Ji feels deeply betrayed for having to hear comments about inheriting crime and karma, and never being able to grow up normally. This could really push her toward the wrong path. And as soon as she's living well and healthy, they'll start cursing her just for being happy. She wonders what she's working for and what she's trying to prove, since she's forced to smile and act as if nothing's happening. At that moment, her mother comes into the room because outside, people are throwing rocks at her window. Ajumione apologizes to Buck for the people outside and for the way Jai is acting. She knows she should be with her, but she's working all-night shifts. Her friend says it's exam period, so it's no problem. Then her mother tells him not to leave the house if possible and to call if anything happens. She notices the numbers appear above his head again. The girl gets scared when she sees that countdown again above her friend Bake. When the numbers start going down, she gets frightened and tries to tell him not to leave the house. Then he starts looking for ingredients in her house but doesn't find anything to make dinner. He notices the people who were throwing rocks at her window have left, so he tells his friend he'll quickly go down to a convenience store. He notices she's sleeping and quietly slips out. However, he's caught off guard by the men who were throwing rocks, who corner him. They stop him from closing the door and start coming in, asking if he's her relative or boyfriend. The guys even know his name and start recording Beck's face, asking if the girl is at home. He tries to tell them they're crossing the line and that he'll call the police for filming and harassing him. But it's no use. The guys open the door and start entering the apartment. An extremely strong guy puts his hand on the door and doesn't let Beck close it. The crazy man says it's been many years, back when his daughter was around 18 as well, that she was a sweet little girl and was taken to heaven because of Moji Hayan's father. Beck puts the pieces together and realizes this guy wants revenge and is completely unhinged. Entering the house, he starts asking where the girl is and where her room is. With twisted ideas in his head, he even seems happy to know the serial killer had a daughter. He says he suffered a lot because of it, but now it's finally his turn to take revenge, and he pulls out a hammer. The friend puts his hand on the crazy man's shoulder and tells him to stop right there. But the guy isn't in a good mood today and hits Beck right away. Someone from the group says he's going to get himself in trouble for using violence. At that moment, the girl wakes up and sees the mess in her living room, where the man seeking revenge tells him not to get in his way, and Beck is lying on the floor like dead meat, saying he's going to make her pay for what he suffered in the same measure. The girl notices her friend's countdown is at 1 minute. For the first time, she's seeing it clearly. Every hour, every minute, every second left for her friend, his life ticking away like a clock. She finally realizes that no matter who these people are, they will always treat her as the daughter of the serial killer. They just need some kind of revenge or someone to throw their anger at, always treating her as someone who might become like her father in the future. With no restraint, the girl says if that's what they want her to do, then she'll do it. She grabs a knife, ready to put the guy in a coffin. But at that moment, the numbers criminal appears and stops her from doing it. Everyone stares at this lunatic inside the house in shock, and he asks Moji Hayan if those are her last words. Without even waiting for her to answer, he slashes her, since she was about to do the same as her father. All of this ends up on the internet because the guy started a live stream. Everyone is shocked by that hammer-wielding man seeking revenge, and shouting that it was fair for him to make the girl pay for the pain he felt. With a huge number of people watching the live, everything is shown, even the moment she pulled the knife. But the numbers criminal is smart and broke their phones to leave no evidence. He grabbed the girl's arm and stopped her from doing what she intended. He wondered what had driven Moji Hayan to almost become a criminal. Whether she had inherited her father's traits or just the expectation that she would. Not caring much, the numbers lunatic took her to meet her father in another plane. After all, that wasn't his concern, as he was only fulfilling his mission. After he finishes the task, the guys keep staring at him in fear. They start talking about running away as fast as they can because the man's knife is covered in ketchup. One of them flees, whining that he lost his camera. The man who sought revenge is shocked to see the girl took a hit. Then he tries to finish her off on the floor but is stopped by the numbers guy, who says that unfortunately he should do the same thing. But he lets the man live because he only has the number 1 above his head. Meanwhile, the girl on the floor asks who the scared man is. Seeing that she's still breathing, he notices his knife wasn't that sharp after all. On top of that, the numbers above her head still hadn't disappeared. This makes her realize that he can also see numbers just like she can. Seeing his eyes glow blue, the man sees several numbers still above her head. They represent 4,000 lives she would take in the future, showing that this girl is like the Black Death. In the news report, they keep saying the only thing in common between the victims is the numbers carved on their skin. They don't know the man's motive or what the numbers mean, just the same story we've already heard. At this moment, the girl understands everything because her life flashes before her eyes, and she realizes she would somehow take 4,000 lives in the future, though she doesn't know how. She also understands that this man is here to take the lives of people like her, dangerous criminals. Her vision starts to blur, and she sees the time she has left right before her eyes. For her, there are 30 seconds left, and for her friend 50, which makes her sad because she doesn't want Beck to go. She doesn't know what to do, as she only has 20 seconds left and desperately wants to help her friend somehow. The scared man asks if she has any last words, repeating himself as always. She spends her remaining energy asking why he let the guy live when he had attacked Beck. Our favorite anti-hero knows it's a question she would hardly understand. He finds the girl strange, since that's her curiosity when she's about to meet the big man in the sky. He explains that people with the number 1 are not targets to be eliminated according to his strange rule. After all, the outcome of someone's life doesn't change because of that. After this explanation, one he has given thousands of times, the girl understands and closes her eyes. At that moment, when he tightened his grip on the knife and G began to weaken, losing consciousness, something strange happened that scared the masked man out of his mind. That number, which had been at 4,000, began to fluctuate and drop drastically. until it reached the number 1, with the girl almost on her way to the heavens. This makes our anti-hero remember a conversation with a woman. She told him he was the only one who could complete his mission and that he would do it no matter what, unless he could prove that the numbers couldn't go down. Otherwise, he wouldn't carry out his task. But just then, the man who wanted revenge appears behind him with a hammer. However, our anti-hero is far too strong and manages to block the Thor-like strike. The man starts shouting that he'll be the only one to take the girl's life. At that moment, the number above his head goes up to 2. He says his only reason for living is this, and he's ready to take out the masked man too. This shocks the masked man as the number increased out of nowhere. Seeing the situation, he finds a way to take the hammer from the man's hands and throws him to the ground. He starts remembering a previous case where numbers had also increased. He decides to leave that for later and act according to the changes. The man then gets back up and tries to finish off the unconscious girl on the ground. So he does what he does best and sends the man to meet God in style. After that, the police start heading toward the scene, with 2 bodies on the ground and the other guy almost joining them. The masked man finds it interesting that the number went from 4,000 to 1 so suddenly. He wonders who this girl is and why she's the only one who went through this phenomenon. As the police get closer, he says he's made up his mind and already has an idea. So he saves the girl, puts her in his car, and escapes. With her, he takes the road in his dark, very suspicious car. The girl is inside the car, still half unconscious. Until, feeling a lot of pain, she wakes up and wonders where she is. Getting out of the car, she's in a strange place with a half-destroyed building or house. She remembers being at home the previous day with her friend Bak Min. Suddenly, the scared man appears, and she starts remembering what happened the night before. Our beloved anti-hero saw her waking up earlier than he expected. When she tries to run away in fear of him, remembering what he did, a rope catches her foot. It stops her from running away, and he tells her not to waste her energy on that and to get inside his house. While doing his tasks, the man says he has no intention of ending her, but he wants her to stay quiet. The girl obeys and waits inside the car while he does some crazy things. She remembers that this guy kept showing up at the diner where she works. Soon she pieces it together and realizes he's the infamous number criminal, and she understands that his targets are people with numbers above their heads. She recalls him talking about the 4,000 people he would take the lives of. She asks him if she actually carried out that act, but the guy is annoyingly pedantic, correcting her and stating the exact number of people she was going to kill. Then he explains that people with the number 1 above their heads are not targets to be eliminated. For some strange reason, after he answers her question, it's as if she instinctively knows exactly what to do to avoid being eliminated by him, as if it were something easy to escape and avoid. Besides that, her friend Bake Min is only alive because of her. Originally, the boy was supposed to be gone because of that man, and he ended up being taken by the girl because of it. But somehow, in an unbelievable way, she altered fate and her number became 1. That man was supposed to survive and create a new future. But the moment his number increased to 2, he became the next target of the anti-hero. At that moment, she understands that if her friend survived, it's because the masked man completed his task. He confirms that he took that man's life, and before intervening, she almost lost hers too. Jay asks if that man's number dropped a little before he was gone, just like hers did. Our vigilant asks if she's blaming him, considering she tried to take that man's life herself. He explains that once a number is formed, it shouldn't change no matter what, and that's what she didn't understand. It doesn't matter if you get cut up, torn apart like a Lego, or locked away. The number doesn't change, because no matter what happens, the numbers are destined to complete their count due to fate. But somehow, through some strange way, she managed to lower that number. In a grim tone, he asks if she understands what her existence means to him. After all, this has never happened before, and he starts driving somewhere. Moji Hayan asks where she's being taken. Our masked man says he doesn't know yet, that he's just driving without a destination. He says he can't let someone like her walk around freely. Even if she refuses, he says Jai is free to decide and try her best to escape from him, and return to her old life, though she'll constantly be running away. On top of having to prove her innocence while everyone points fingers at her, she can go ahead and fulfill her destiny, even by eliminating someone, as everyone expects from her. When he asks what her decision will be, the girl starts spiraling and tries not to listen to him, putting it in her head that she has to escape no matter what and asking him to drop her off at her house. She says she'll even stay with him, but she needs a few things and needs to see her mother. Starting to get very nervous, she says she has to grab her clothes and other belongings. Jae Hayan thinks this won't work, but he accepts the proposal. So he takes her to her house and the disguised girl tries to sneak in unnoticed. Ji imagines the crime scene must be clean by now. Also, the anti-hero parked the car in a spot with no cameras, telling her to be back in 30 minutes without getting caught by anyone. At that moment, the girl enters her house, jumping over the crime scene tape, grabbing emergency items, clothes, and other things, hurrying a lot and thinking of a way to get far from that man, thinking of going in the opposite direction and then running away. But she starts wondering where she should go afterward. However, someone is watching her from the doorway in a shady way. The numbers criminal says that if she comes back, she'll pass the test. But if she tries to escape him, things won't go well for her and she'll fail. And at that exact moment, someone appears, lurking with a broken bottle in hand. At that moment, the person bursts into her house, making the girl scared out of her mind, as he raises the broken bottle above his head, ready to attack her. The girl screams in desperation, and suddenly she realizes it's her friend Baekmin. He's surprised to see Moji Hayan alive, and then asks what she's doing in her house. He says he'd heard the police had left and came back to get a backpack he had left behind. However, he noticed the door was open and someone was inside the house, so he grabbed this broken glass bottle. For a second, he thought those lunatics had come back and apologizes for scaring her. The girl puts her hand on his face, noticing it's bandaged, saying it's her fault, which makes the boy a bit embarrassed and red, asking if he's okay or in pain, and Baek says it was just a scratch. Changing the subject, her friend asks where she's been during these days she disappeared, commenting that he's very happy to see her alive after she went missing. All the media and people are spreading rumors saying she fled the crime scene because she was an accomplice of the numbers killer. Also, a detective had given him a card earlier to call in case he knew anything and tell everything he knew about the events. Noticing the girl is sad with a suitcase, Baekmin asks why she has all that luggage. The girl doesn't answer and simply walks toward the door. Baek asks what's going on and where Moji Hayan is going in total desperation. Ji asks what he's trying to do since he saw everything that happened that day and was even stabbed. During his time in the hospital, he watched the video to be sure, seeing the moment when the guy hit him with a hammer and the other told him not to use violence. The man saying she would pay for what he suffered and all that. However, in the scene where the girl was about to attack the man, the ledge stream ended. He asked the detective what happened afterward, and the man took out his yo-yo, saying the phone was destroyed and the live stream ended at that moment. But according to internet users, it seems it was the work of the number criminal. They don't know if Ji Hayan is alive, and if she is, they don't know her whereabouts, and many things still need clarification. Either way, after the video stopped, the public started pointing fingers at the child and blaming her. Because he's her friend, the detective asks him to convince her. After all, they don't have any information about the number guy yet either. On a street lit only by a lamppost, the girl says she's leaving before the police arrive. Baekmin asks why she's running and tells her to answer if she eliminated that man. He assumes she didn't, so why run if she didn't do anything? Also, he really wants to know where she's going, and she remembers what the number guy said, that if she decided not to stay with him, she would be hunted all the time and would have to prove her innocence to people. But he says she doesn't need to prove anything to him since he knows she didn't inherit her father's traits. She should let them say whatever they want and not care about what others think. After all, deep down, he's sure she wouldn't do something like that. But the girl shouts no, that he's wrong because it's not about proving something. It's not that simple because at that moment, she didn't want to stop the man or save Baek from him. She simply wanted to sweep him under the rug and end him. And she wasn't out of her mind. She was thinking clearly and didn't want to save anyone. She figures that what they say about her being like her father might be true, showing she has daddy issues. Destined crimes, that's why the masked man can see the numbers above her and others. And if it wasn't because of him, maybe it was for another reason. Then she apologizes to her best friend and starts to leave. Baek stands there all sad, telling her to come back, but that's what happens when you like a problematic girl. Jess says she doesn't want him getting hurt because of her and shouldn't waste his life on someone like her. Her best friend says his mother is in the hospital after collapsing and that she can't break his heart again. This hits the girl hard as she remembers her mother's reaction when she got the news about her father. Crying, she said it would be another reason for her to be like her father, and even so, she says she wants to see her mother one last time. But after that, she leaves and gets into our anti-hero's car. He says she's late, and he thought she had run away. The girl calls him master and says he can get rid of potential criminals. Our vigilante says someone has to do it, and he's the only one who can. Ji asks if, while she's with him, she won't have to worry about ending anyone's life. The scared man says she doesn't need to worry, because if he sees the number above her head increase, he'll get rid of her on the spot. As they hit the road, the girl sits thoughtful and relaxed in the presence of this lunatic with good intentions. Meanwhile, that weird yo-yo detective enters her house. They conclude that the girl is alive and wonder why she's sneaking around in her own home like that. The detective hopes to have an answer about the surveillance camera system soon. At that moment, he takes photos of the girl at the diner and also sees numbers above her head, revealing her red eyes just like the blue eyes of the numbers killer and G's yellow ones. Someone in a dark hallway starts calling emergency services, giving her address and detailing the incident. whispering and saying there's someone right outside her door, asking for help as soon as possible. The officer says they'll send a patrol to her address. The girl keeps asking non-stop why they don't just arrest the maniac standing at her door. The police tell her to stay calm and say the guy is probably just loitering in the hallway and might not even hurt her. For now, they can't do anything and can't arrest a man based only on her suspicion. In desperation, the woman asks if they're going to wait until she's eliminated by him before taking action. After this crazy moment, we see the two of them on the road 9 hours later. They stop for a bit to eat and relax in the middle of the trip. While she asks if he eats anything besides cereal. Ignoring her, the anti-hero tells her to check a drawer. But the girl keeps pestering him with questions about the food he eats, making him say he eats eggs and chicken too. Doesn't really like the taste, saying what really matters is the routine, which must always be repeated. For him, what bothers him most is when variables disrupt his routine. Today is November 24th, which marks the 4th day since the journey began with the numbers killer. Even if she says she's just with him and not doing anything, in reality she's just tagging along. When getting out of the car, the numbers man tells her not to loiter in the street since the police know her face. He says that if he doesn't come back in an hour, she can go on her own way. The girl comments that his routine is always the same. He stops in a dark alley, then goes to a more deserted spot and starts looking for his next target in the crowd. Moji Hayan remembers he used to do this at the restaurant where she worked. She also remembers the good memories with the people at her job, making her question if she's following the right path, and more than that, what path she's even following. At night, the man shows up, startling the girl, changing his clothes that are stained with tomato sauce, which makes her a little disgusted. The numbers man says he put 2 people to sleep, and they were going to have a party. One had 5 and the other 3 people. He had to put them in a coffin today, even though he didn't want to use force. Suddenly, the girl starts feeling a headache and a yellow flash appears in her vision. Above the anti-hero's head, a time appears. Then she understands what those yellow numbers mean. They are the remaining time a person has. The killer asks her what she's seeing in her vision. Moji Hayan pretends not to understand and acts like she doesn't know what he's talking about. In truth, she has no reason to hide it from him, but she's scared. Deep down, she thinks telling him wouldn't bring anything good. Meanwhile, the man drifts into his thoughts and remembers the past, when he complained about something strange happening to his eyes during childhood. Realizing that the same thing is happening to the girl in the way he imagined. A day passes, and he parks the car again in a secluded alley, saying he has a few things to buy and will be back in an hour or 2. At that moment, the girl's eye activates, and she starts seeing people's remaining lifespan. There are 2 numbers, and the one on the right decreases at a different rate each time. The units are different, so 1 and 5 before someone dies means 1 minute and 5 seconds. The 3 and 31 that appeared before on Bakeman meant 3 hours and 31 minutes. Stretching it further, the 3 and 2 from before represented 3 days and 2 hours. Stretching even more, those numbers could possibly represent months and even years. In this case, she tries to figure out the numbers above the head of the family in front of her. Noticing that the woman called Ani looks very unwell, the girl gets irritated because she thinks the woman isn't eating properly while living alone. Indeed, the woman has a deeply exhausted look in her eyes, connecting it to the beginning, showing that she is the same girl who was being chased. Where the man outside her door kept banging and telling her to report him to the police, saying that if she did, he would come in and end her for good. He kept telling her to see what would happen if she messed with him. The guy even started threatening her whole family, pure Joker behavior. Then she sees that this entire family has an 8 and 31 above their heads, as if that guy who threatened her in the middle of the night was actually going to get what he wanted. And indeed, in the middle of the crowd, there's this hooded man walking to carry out what he said. Only it won't be that simple, since our anti-hero notices him. Seeing the number 3 above his head, he says he's finally found him. Noticing that the family's number is the same, the girl gets scared. She keeps trying to understand what's going on, and seeing how fast the numbers on the right are going down. They're not seconds. This means it'll happen in 8 hours and 30 minutes. The little girl keeps asking to go to the mall with her mother while G wonders what to do. Even if she follows them, there's not much she can do to help. But impulsively, she gets out of the car and starts following the family. From the top of a building, the serial killer notices Moji Hayan running and maybe escaping. But then he realizes she's chasing someone. Putting the pieces together, he sees she's following the family being stalked by the other man, while he continues tracking the man with the number 3 above his head and finally spots him. At this point, the family heads to the mall to shop. Ani, the mother, starts getting several messages and blocks them all. The man says she should report the stalker who's been calling her nonstop to the police. She realizes the maniac has posted her number in public places so people send her messages. He started making reservations in her name, even at funeral homes, forcing her to block it all. The old man wants to understand what this lunatic wants from her, but the woman says if she didn't, she wouldn't be sitting there doing nothing. Still, she'll remain there until she manages to move away, though she wants to keep the little girl from knowing about it. Moji Hayan understands she's being stalked, which means her entire family will be a target for this lunatic too. She doesn't think that's fair since the child is still so young. At that moment, the serial killer appears like a ninja, saying there are 3 targets including a child. The girl is startled by his sudden appearance, and the anti-hero asks what numbers she sees above their heads. There's no reason to hide it, since she can also see numbers, which is why she blindly followed the family here. The girl asks how he knows that, and the number explains it was the pain she felt in her eye earlier. Also, she kept staring at the top of his head sometimes. He says it was strange from the start, since even at death's door, Jai accepted the absurd idea of the numbers far too easily. She wonders if she should tell him the whole truth, since at this point there's no reason to hide it anymore. Meanwhile, the mother talks with her daughter Minseo. After that, they decide to go their way and leave the mall. Moji thinks about calling out, but realizes it would draw attention and stops. Then she starts telling the truth to the number serial killer, who finds it interesting that she can see other people's remaining time. Even though she's not entirely sure, she thinks this family will be gone in 8 hours and 31 minutes. And at that point, the whole family will be on the other side by around 10 p.m. She also heard a conversation about a stalker constantly harassing the woman. It could be the stalker's doing, and the number is sure he's the one behind it. When the girl asks how he's so certain, the anti-hero says the guy is watching them from above, and that he has the number 3 above his head, which can't be a coincidence since it matches exactly the number of people in the family. When the girl thinks about running after them, the serial killer holds her back to stop her. The girl thinks she should go and tell the whole family. She feels she needs to tell them the stalker is on the upper floor of the mall so they can report him to the police. Even after all the warnings, the number guy gets angry that the girl still doesn't understand him. But then someone bumps into Unnie and knocks her shopping bags to the ground. The mother thanks the people who help her, but suddenly she sees something that makes her freak out and scream. Her family tries to understand what's wrong with her while she's hysterical, until she starts pointing at the stalker watching from the upper floor, crying and asking herself what he's doing in the same mall as her. The numbers man says she got what she wanted since the family has now realized he was there. At that moment, Moji notices the numbers above their heads have changed, becoming 7 hours and 4 minutes, and she remembers the numbers man said numbers can never change. No matter what they do, their fate of being eliminated by the man in 7 hours won't change, unless the numbers serial killer interferes and takes out the lunatic. The man says her being able to see the exact time someone is going to kick the bucket is very advantageous. After all, if the clock stops, it means those people's remaining time doesn't change, so there's no need to rush so much since they know it'll only be in 7 hours. Meanwhile, he's going to prepare as always and tells Moji to keep following the 3 of them, always trying to be as discreet as possible, or the stalker will notice and become cautious. He then asks how they'll stay in contact if he removed the chip from her phone. The serial killer says he put a tracker on her phone earlier and will know her location. The girl is shocked and asks if he's serious, saying that's really creepy. He's always told her she's free to run away, but never said he'd let her go completely. And even so, she's still by his side by her own choice, saying he's never forced her to help him with this at any moment. Moji then realizes she ended up helping the number serial killer commit his crime. He says that if she doesn't want to do it, she can tell him, because he'd rather do it alone than have her as an obstacle. The girl finds it hard to believe this will only end when that stalker is gone. She asks how her number stays unchanged even after everything that happened. The stalker couldn't do anything if she locked the door and reported him to the police. First of all, the police can only take action after something happens, instead of taking precautions and preventing the act before it actually happens. Second, he can feel a bit of devotion coming from the stalker, as if he had planned this entire scheme meticulously for a long time. So simply locking the door wouldn't be enough to stop this lunatic. Time passes, leaving only 1 hour and 15 minutes for that family. At that moment, the father complains to the police for leaving so soon. They say that if the stalker shows up again, then they can take measures and put an ankle monitor on him. But since he hasn't shown up since being seen at the mall, there's nothing to worry about for now. The police ask them to keep using the watch they gave them, and also to try staying inside the house as much as possible. They say they'll do one more round before leaving and will let them know if they find anything. As the officers leave, we see someone watching from behind a railing, but it's not the stalker. In fact, it's Moji Hayan. The girl feels relieved that the police have finally gone, seeing that this place is below the building structure and happy that it's empty, while remembering the numbers man saying that if she had doubts, she could see for herself. Since she's on the highest floor, the crime won't happen. That is, if she stays guarding the front of the door, of course. She didn't feel too good when she saw they'd have to take someone's life. But just like the anti-hero said, it's necessary for that person to be gone in order to save 3 innocent people. Even if she can't do it herself, she has to help the numbers man in some way. With 39 minutes left until the incident, the stalker shows up at the family's building, walking with a toolbox in hand until he stops in front of the door next to the family's. Pulling out duct tape and sticking it on the outside of the door, While the girl wonders what he's doing, he starts covering the railings, then using a tool to break the glass without making too much noise, thus breaking into one of the building's floors, walking through it cautiously without making a sound, and the girl notices he's gone, and now with only 26 minutes left until the incident, the woman begins to smell something strange inside the apartment, as if there's a gas leak. She finds it strange since she doesn't remember leaving the gas on in the kitchen. At that moment, Moji creeps in quietly while the father asks if they left the window open, and she realizes it was the window he broke to let the gas in. When she goes to check, she sees he connected a gas cylinder to the apartment to make everything explode. But in reality, he never left. He ends up coming in through another window. While the girl tries to disconnect the gas hose, she lets out a few screams. Then she quickly pulls the hose out of the apartment. The girl starts screaming desperately for someone to open the door. At that moment, the mother hears and becomes even more frightened. After all, her father had been struck by the crazy guy. Completely out of his mind, the man then takes the daughter hostage too. Laughing, he says it's been a while since they last saw each other. He asks how she managed to escape when he had begged for mercy, saying he warned her he would wipe out every last one of them, shouting that if she keeps treating him like trash, things will get bad for her. In the middle of all this family chaos and madness, something happens that makes everyone stop. The guy was about to hit the woman but stops because of a noise from above. It comes from Moji Hayan. It's her phone vibrating, and a message from the number serial killer telling her to report it to the police. Seeing that the message came from a phone without a SIM card, she realizes who it's from. It's exactly what the number killer was talking about earlier. Taking advantage of the stalker's distraction, the mother throws herself at him, managing to knock him to the ground and save her daughter's life. The girl runs off to call the police at that moment. Right then, the girl opens the door, and Moji Hayan is behind her, taking the door right to the face. The stalker then yanks the mother by the hair in a completely vile move. Ji watches all this in shock as the man pulls out a weapon that's definitely not for cutting chicken. That's when the heroine appears, spraying gas in the maniac's face. Everyone starts coughing, and he can't do anything either. Seeing the time above the woman's head decrease even more, she tells her mother to run. After all, only 12 minutes and 47 seconds remain for them. The stalker hadn't been expecting another person at his private party and gets irritated, shouting at a guy and asking why he's going so far. That's when the maniac realizes she must be the one who's been following him, asking what he's going to do, if he'll report him to the police too. At this moment, it becomes clear he's the ex-boyfriend of the woman in that family, saying that what's about to happen would make a great news story. That's why he says to go ahead, because he doesn't care after all. No one will stop what he's about to do. By the time the police arrive, they'll all be gone anyway. When he runs toward the daughter, Moji Hayan manages to push him away, making her wonder how many more people will suffer at the hands of bad people like him and her father. This allows her to help the family's daughter escape while she stays behind. The crazed stalker starts shouting for the girl to come back, but what he's not expecting is that right behind him is Batman, or rather our number anti-hero, showing up to give him a scare before disappearing again. Exactly like Batman, the guy unnerves him by hiding in the shadows, until the hallway light turns back on after being off. Before he can think it was all in his head, the serial killer appears, grabbing the maniac and slamming him against the wall, then taking out his knife and acting like the guy is a piece of meat ready for the barbecue, telling him to answer his question once the pain goes away, asking the stalker if he has any last words, but the guy doesn't care and grabs his weapon again to try and finish off the number, only for the anti-hero to keep doing his Batman cosplay and vanish again, which makes the stalker increasingly paranoid. He then starts running toward the mother, his ex-girlfriend. Before he can even get close to her, he takes a kick to the back from the number, leaving Moji Hayan startled, and then the number throws the gas cylinder at him, saying he wouldn't be hurt if he had behaved from the start. Meanwhile, the lunatic lies on the ground in agony, making her wonder who these people are. He gets up with the gas cylinder in hand and charges toward the girl protected by the number's man. Before being hit, she starts having flashes in her head, saying she never wanted to be like her father, and that might have been the only reason she followed the number's serial killer. She could have easily gotten rid of the tracker phone and escaped him. She wonders if she was unable to run away out of fear that the number's man would come after her or not. Or maybe she was waiting for an answer from this man, one that only he could give, and that's when the number's man saved her from being struck. When he takes the man down, she understands. She wanted a reason to commit crimes under his twisted logic of taking out people to save others. It's at that moment that the number's man removes his mask and goes to ask, one last time, his usual question. She wonders if she truly hoped to change the future with that twisted logic, because maybe she really did hope for a world where her loved ones wouldn't suffer from bad people like that man who had been stalking them. At that moment, the favorite anti-hero with a superhero complex asks the guy if he has any last words. The woman tries to recover upstairs, but she cries a lot. Moji asks if she can stand and helps her, As soon as she gets up and leans on the girl, she asks who they are. Jai leads the woman and says that when the police arrive, they won't mention seeing her there. Even if it's not that simple, they also won't tell the police what this looks like. The woman from the family seems to understand something about these people who saved her. After some time, she returns home and sees her father on the couch all beaten up. While the father complains about the pain, Moji Hayan watches the scene looking a bit upset, and the scared man says his injuries aren't critical and that he'll survive if treated. Of course, this could happen since he deals with numbers, thus defeating the stalker lying on the ground in agony, almost on his way out. The girl notices he's still alive and says that if it weren't for her interruption, he would have finished his plan. He asks if she has any idea who she just messed with. He says she's a terrible kind of girl, and she asks what kind exactly, even though she's not curious. After all, she doesn't care who he is or what his story might be. She doesn't care about the opinion of a maniac like him who would even try to attack a child. All beat up on the floor like a piece of meat, the man curses and says she knows nothing about his life. Meanwhile, Mo tells the serial killer that the police should be arriving soon and they should get out. He tells her to go ahead while he listens to the stalker's last words. Even though it's true he doesn't have much time, he thinks he can manage it. She asks if he's serious when he keeps asking for the last words of these bad people. The mystery man says there'd be no reason to ask every time if he wasn't serious. Jay asks why he bothers to hear the final words of such bad people. He then tells her to go outside if she doesn't want to hear, and she obeys. She stays at the top of the building and sees police cars approaching quickly, and she doesn't understand why he's so obsessed with the final words of bad people, when they should actually be fleeing the police at times like this. She goes back to warn him about the police and arrives just as he sends the man to hell. Seeing some ropes and a belt on the ground that she doesn't quite understand, the number serial killer says he left them there in advance. Based on the layout of the area, as soon as they finish the job, they could be caught by the police or have their faces show up on cameras. That's why he's suggesting they jump from that height using the ropes, just like Batman. She realizes this is the escape route he planned, but she still doesn't want to do it. He then ties the rope to the pipe, puts it on his back, and G holds on tight so she doesn't fall. The girl is completely panicked, but it's the only option for them to escape. They keep rappelling down because the guy is a big fan of The Dark Knight, and he does everything very meticulously so the security cameras won't catch them. Waiting for the exact moment when moths pass in front of the camera, he descends at full speed, letting his foot loose and sliding his body down the rope, going so fast that it completely terrifies the girl. He keeps holding the rope and kicking against the wall to gain more momentum. That way, they start descending the entire building from the outside without being seen. After that, the case is reported with all the street and time information. The police comment that it's a stalker case. The scene was initially discovered by an officer and his superintendent. Based on the wounds and the number carved into the victim's wrist, this case was linked to the number serial killer. The next morning, several police vehicles are already at the crime scene to investigate, along with the detective who also has an ocular ability and his partner. Knowing there's been another case from the same number criminal, the detective examines the security cameras. His assistant calls his attention and asks what he's doing. Sunba says he's looking at the clouds and trying to guess their shapes. She brings footage from the security cameras near the area, saying that even if they brought everything, it wouldn't be enough. Then he asks her to hide her yo-yo because the boss will get mad if he sees it, and she says he should get rid of it soon. Meanwhile, the police and forensic scientists analyze the crime scene. They say they couldn't find any clues this time because the fire extinguisher erased the fingerprints. They have nothing besides prints of the family victims and the stalker who's already gone. Sunda politely asks Detective Moon if he can tell him where the family victims are now. Moon says the father is in the hospital and that the family must be there with him as well. He then shares the address with the red-eyed detective. The detective says Samba can't just enter crime scenes whenever he wants since everyone there is giving their all. He also says Sunbei should take responsibility if he contaminates evidence with dirty shoes. The red-eyed detective says he came at the wrong time and interrupted their hard work. Then he leaves with his assistant to check the security camera footage. As he says goodbye, he sarcastically wishes everyone a great job. The other detectives say there's no need to be so mad at someone who only comes to get in their way, while another detective thinks he might actually be a decent guy, which irritates his partner. Sunbei's partner says it seems they hate him, and the detective understands why. He just wanted to make friends, but they didn't give him a chance. At that moment, he activates his red eye ocular ability and analyzes the video. His partner asks if they should go to the hospital, and he says not yet. She asks if he minds her taking a look and grabs the footage from his hand. She sees a hooded man who looks familiar to her, even though she hasn't seen his face yet. She concludes it's clearly the number criminal entering the building at 10 at night. The problem is that there's no sign of him leaving the building in the footage she provided. When he asks her to guess how they escaped, the assistant says it must have been through the roof, but there's also the possibility that he escaped from a lower floor. That is, if you take into account the resident witnesses and the blind spots in the security cameras. But when they get to the roof and see marks on the pipes, they conclude that's where it happened. Still, he doesn't understand how he wasn't caught on the 4th floor security cameras if he descended there. So he decides to take another look at the moment in the video, noticing that in the footage, some insects flew in front at the time. At the exact moment of the escape, the moths flew in front of the camera. Sunbed notices the range of the cameras, their blind spots, and where the witnesses were looking at that exact moment, when a flash and the light appeared out of nowhere as soon as the power came back. The exact moment when the swarm of moths, excited by the light, blocked the camera for several seconds. All these factors had now been pieced together, but there's no way to know that while committing a crime. This makes him certain that this man always finds a way to leave, always taking the safest and most efficient route that no one would imagine. Or maybe he can predict the future to do that. His partner asks if his ocular ability is similar to Detective Sunbay's. During the night, we see the family at the hospital, and the detective calling the girl who survived to talk, telling her to stay calm because he just wants to ask a few questions. With his ocular ability active, he sees the numbers 2, 3, 1, 0, and 3. Asking how she's feeling, the woman says she's fine and has been better before. At that moment, the last number, which was 3, changes to 2 above her head. He knows she's aware that now she can't lie and must answer everything honestly. The girl agrees to this while we see the detective's evidence notebook with a photo. In one day, how many lies can a human tell on average? He thinks it's around 2 or 3 times a day. However, depending on the profession, he says some people can lie up to 200 times a day. Either way, whether by habit or not, sometimes it's a way to get out of sudden situations, even if it's out of simple malice and toxic spite. The reason behind a liar's nature varies greatly, and a statistic might have very little meaning. To be able to see through someone's lies, being able to see the estimated future number of lies a person will tell. It's in those moments that you can peek inside someone's essence. The man's physique is probably around 1.80 meters, and he asks if that's the height of the man she saw. The woman answers yes, and the detective assumes she didn't see the man's face. She says she didn't. After all, it was dark, and she can't remember very well. Seeing that the number didn't drop, he realizes she didn't lie at that moment. Then he asks if, at that time, the number's man had already subdued the stalker, and if she knows when that happened. The woman guesses it wasn't long after the lights went out. Then the detective concludes it was about 3 to 5 minutes later, and the woman confirms, confirming that the criminal entered the apartment when the lights went out at 10 at night. Also, if they change their assumption to say he left after looking to the future, when the moths had already covered the security cameras, that would be the moment the number's man left the apartment. So while talking to the woman, he says the man left the apartment 30 minutes later, considering that after entering, within 5 minutes, he had already subdued the stalker, asking her what he did during the 15-minute break. The woman says she's not sure because she only briefly ran toward him and was in the hallway the whole time. At that moment, another number drops, revealing she told a lie. As soon as she got home, he had already left and vanished. But Sunbay is sure she lied. He knows she lied when she said she ran to him and spoke with him, when in reality she was in her home the whole time with the number's criminal. He knows she just doesn't want the police to find out and needs to figure out why. He then returns to the topic of her being a stalker's victim, commenting on the portable rope ladder and gas cylinder, showing he was well prepared for the situation. A bit uneasy about this stalker topic, the woman asks what that has to do with the case. The detective is simply trying to figure out the criteria the number's maniac uses to target his victim, asking Eun why she was targeted by this stalker. She can tell him as long as she has at least an approximate idea. The girl says she doesn't want to because it stresses her out too much. With his ocular stability, he notices she simply rejected the question and can't judge it as a lie. He knows he could try digging deeper, but there will be a lot of resistance on her part, so he decides to just ask one last question. If she knows the girl in the photo who works in a diner. At that moment, she remembers the woman telling her that when the police arrived, she should pretend she didn't see her there. However, while talking to the detective, she reveals she had indeed seen the woman before, only in the news, and she knows she's the daughter of that psychopath, Moji Hayan. She manages to bypass the detective's lie detector because she only omitted a fact. The detective says she's right but is sure the girl's face was blurred in the news. Eun tries to justify it by saying she saw that report recently and asks Sunbae to stop doubting her, saying that a victim like her would have no reason to lie, and his eyes even shine. The detective remembers seeing the security cameras and noticing the psychopath's daughter on the building's stairs. He says many people came close to death, and the only thing in common was that they all survived thanks to the number, wanting, perhaps subconsciously, to return the favor he did for them, or maybe to hide something from themselves. That's why he's going to ask the woman once again, not about the news or the reports, but if on the day of the incident she saw the girl. After this interrogation, we get the view inside the Daejeon police station, where Sunbae draws conclusions about the Sunlight apartment case and the number serial killer. The chief asks how many times he's been in this cat and mouse game that only wastes his time. Another person comments that in the Mindon case, there was a chance the girl had joined forces with the number criminal. He remembers the moment the woman lied in the interrogation about not having seen the girl with the man, smiling and saying the man wasn't lying. Even without evidence that Moji Hayan joined forces with him, he understands the reason. There were no fingerprints, no DNA found, and no identification from the security cameras. In fact, the detective even erased the image files from the building's security cameras. Not even the family victim, Yun Seon, mentioned anything about Ji being there, even when he said that if she spoke to the police and explained exactly what happened, she wouldn't have any problems. Even continuing to pursue the girl after the Mindong case, he decides to handle this arrest first, and then investigate the number case separately. With his partner in the car leaving the station, she asks if this is the right thing to do. Sunva doesn't see anything wrong with it, since he met the woman on his own and got good answers. After all, hiding the girl is a safety net, because the number can predict the future. He finds it unlikely they'll be able to follow the trail because of the boy. After all, they haven't been able to have an open conversation yet, and he thinks they can't let him get caught by the police officers first. They should deal with some problems first and then follow them. Right after that, we see the girl entering the hospital room to see her father, while the younger one asks what the detective said and if it was really the number. She adds that he also said he doesn't know how they almost came close to death. Something still weighs on the little girl's heart, because that stalker had no reason to do it. The older one didn't know who he was, and the younger one wants to understand why he spoke about begging for mercy. They also tell their father that the whole family almost died, and no one knows why the guy did it. In Seon tells the younger one that it's over now, and everything will be fine from here on, that they don't need to know these things, and that their father did nothing wrong, and they're alive. They start crying and hugging, grateful for being safe after all that, and that they should never think of scary things again after this. The stalker became just another of the many victims the number made, recording his last words. We see an unhappy memory of the number criminal in a room full of injured people. Along with him, a scar over his eye, and his school friends hurt, shouting at a woman who was doing all of this, taking the lives of all his friends. The woman said she did it because he wouldn't be able to do it himself, saying that if he didn't like it, he should end her, and numbers were above her head. After that, she took another life, and the memory ends. The number wakes up inside his car with a headache, remembering that dramatic day. While the girl sleeps in the back seat, he wonders why he remembered such an old memory. Seeing that he's left a lot behind, he decides to continue his missions. As the girl wakes up, he keeps driving his black van, parking in another alley and going off to complete his tasks, talking to a heavily tattooed woman who recognizes him from some time ago, saying it's been a while since he visited her, ever since he became famous, handing over the audio recorders to her since she had asked for them. Then the tattooed woman gives him the contact he asked for. She asks if she should deduct the cost for all of this. That's when the girl remembers these are the recorders he was always carrying around. The woman also recognizes the girl, saying she has nothing in common with her father, and that it's interesting because she's the only one the numbers man has spared so far. He tells her to ignore everything the woman is saying and to leave. After that, they hit the road again, and she asks what those recorders were. Even with him saying it's none of her business, Moji knows they're the last words of the people he eliminates recorded. She asks for whom and why he's delivering those recordings. He says these recordings are the messages of those who have passed, for the ones they would wanted to speak to one last time. In the end, they once again leave a message of their last words for the people they loved. Others instruct their lawyers on how to divide their legacy and inheritance. And there are also those who spend their last breath cursing those who failed and brought their life to an end. She asks why he makes these memos, and the numbers man says that sometimes they're the only proof left behind. When combined, the information from the eliminated connects to the recipient who should receive the message. Just like the useful parts of the will, it's handed to an agent who will deliver the recording without leaving a trace. The girl thinks it's risky since it's recordings from a crime scene, but the man says anything that could alert the police has been removed. Still, the girl doesn't understand why he does it, since he's trying to eliminate potential future criminals. But then he goes and delivers their last words to someone. She asks what the point of that is, since the same thing happened last time. They almost got caught by the police just to pass on the words of a bad person at death's door. From her point of view, he's doing nothing but risking his own neck. Even if she doesn't understand, he tries to show her something, placing blue flowers on a grave, which she asks whose it is, and he says he doesn't know. After all, that man's last wish was to put flowers on his sister's grave. He says the point is that he once had his own reason, but it doesn't matter much now. He simply decided to carry out the final wishes of the people he eliminates. no matter who they are, as long as it's within his reach to fulfill those last requests. Moji Hayan asks if that really applies even to cold-blooded criminals. For the numbers man with the scar on his face, right or wrong, good or bad doesn't matter. As long as they're one of the future criminals he's sending to the coffin, he wants to honor their last wishes. That's the decision he made and has followed ever since. Even if the girl thinks it's ridiculous, taking someone's life to save an innocent was what she thought he had been doing all this time. But now she doesn't know if this man cares about the kind of person he's about to eliminate. It's like he's a machine that just moves according to the way he programmed himself. She wonders if it was something that happened in his past, but she can't help him. She can only wonder what makes a cold-blooded man like him keep doing what he does. Eventually they reach their destination and he gets out of the car, stopping in a busy street, a sort of underworld and a very shady place. Our anti-hero says it's the last wish that was on the list of one of the people he took, saying he's here to carry out a revenge that a man couldn't complete. A man who in the photograph has the number 34 above his head. A tattooed guy who's inside a nightclub watching everyone there. A man in front of the masked killer begging for him to end someone's life. Our anti-hero asks who he should eliminate. We see a tattooed man in another man's house, telling this man in the suit that he should have had a better life. Then the man in the suit keeps insisting for Batman to do it while crying heavily. It was at that moment that he handed over the recordings he received in exchange for the photo and information on the tattooed man. That tattooed man who's about to cause trouble involving 34 people. That's why he went to this nightclub looking for the guy, because it's the last wish of one of the people on the list. In the nightclub, the tattooed man asks a waiter for another bottle of alcohol, while talking to someone, saying he's already taken plenty of breaks during the week. This man says he's going to charge $7,000 per head, and there are 3 people. He's been threatened with losing his family if he doesn't follow the conditions, and that's going to happen now. The tattooed man says he takes no pleasure in doing this to civilians. Another man asks if what he's feeling coming from him is guilt. The tattooed man says it's an annoyance and that things won't calm down for a while. Another problem is that he'll have to do it with his hands and can't make it look like an accident. He ends by saying he'll get it done within 6 days. Outside the nightclub, our anti-heroes see him passing by. On the phone, he asks to find the whereabouts of the 3 people he needs to send someone after. Moji Hayan asks if he's the target, and the masked man says yes. Our protagonist remembered him being 34 in the photo, and now he's 33. He says he can see numbers in photos only at the moment they were taken, and that number can change. If the tattooed man's number were 1 or 0, he wouldn't fulfill that man's last wish. Strangely, he seems to notice the girl watching him, and G ducks down immediately in fear. She came very close to being seen by that man with a Yakuza face. He says that now that they confirmed his number, they can get down from there. Then the girl asks if ending this man's life was the last wish of another. She asks if he sought revenge, and then was buried by the number. And wouldn't it have been better to let him go and carry out his own revenge himself? If he had taken his revenge, 33 people would have been removed from the list of the destined to depart. However, he doesn't know if he would have gone after this guy for revenge. He could have done it to someone else. Since they're not sure, they should confirm this before ending another person's life. Just like last time, they can figure out who and how will commit the crimes by using the numbers. However, the masked man thinks that doesn't make sense anymore at this point. Leaving a target alone, he starts recalling memories from the past, when all of his childhood friends were taken to a woman who also saw numbers. That this person he's planning to kill could be bad either way, or not. But the woman said it was different because the people she targeted were destined to become criminals. In the past, the boy asked her how she could be so sure she couldn't even see the numbers. It doesn't matter how many people they will attack or if they will do it. What matters is that they're people either way. That's all these children are. He keeps asking her how she can be so sure of what she's doing when taking these lives. Asking Jay if she can see the difference between which numbers should be allowed to die and which should be saved. He's asking if she can truly tell which lives have value and which are worthless. Which of them should be spared and who is good or bad just by looking at the numbers. Saying that's impossible to define, he says the girl doesn't know anything. But in her innocence, she asks if it's really that hard to tell. She thinks it might be obvious, like how a hitman would never make a positive difference in the world. When she was a child, the adults were always smoking on the neighborhood streets as she grew up. She didn't know what they were smoking or how harmful it was, but the smell was always unpleasant to her. She thinks that separating bad people this way doesn't have to be so complicated. However, the math-loving serial killer thinks she still hasn't gotten the point. He decides to stay calm since she's just an uninformed child. He doesn't need to work too hard trying to convince her of his reasons. Whatever the case, he just wants a yes or no answer. When she says it's obvious to choose between the life of one man and the 33 people who would be his victims, he asks if she would choose to end his life to save those other victims. Immediately, Moji Hayan answers that she would, and the mysterious emo guy finds that answer sufficient. He needs her to do something for him that's beyond her reach for now. That's why he's going to teach her how to awaken her Sharingan eyes to the next level. He finds out which club he got the job from and based on surveillance where he's staying. His subordinates usually don't make noise, but it's definitely the office where they operate. He asks the girl how much time he has left to live. Using the eye technique, she notices it's 14 and 9. She imagines it could be 14 hours and 9 minutes, or 14 minutes and 9 seconds, and as factors, since it's greater than 12, it could represent 14 months and 9 days, which leads to the possibility of it being 14 years and 9 months or 14 days and 9 hours. Our protagonist believes it's 14 years and 9 months, especially since he does a job every 2 weeks, even if he asks his subordinate to do some work. Ending up with 33 people in 14 days is enough time. While keeping his eyes on him and looking for an opportunity to send him away, he needs her to monitor his subordinates and take photos and videos of their faces. In addition, he asks her to pay close attention to the number above each of those goons. The girl is a bit shocked at his request to deal with a bunch of grown men. He had warned her it was a bit beyond her limits, so he will teach her how to use her eyes. In an ideal future, he will teach her how to use these numbers perfectly. While they still have time, he takes out 2 firearms. One has an empty barrel, and the other is loaded. He asks the girl to choose between them, pressing one against her head and pulling the trigger, asking whether she wants the gun on the right or the one on the left. Moji asks if he's joking, terrified out of her mind because there's no way he's actually doing this. He simply says that if she chooses the unloaded gun, nothing will happen. However, if she chooses the loaded gun, her remaining lifetime will drop to 0. That's why he's doing this, to check the numbers that will appear to see how much time she has left. That way she'll know which gun is loaded and which one isn't. She must do the same as she does with people, looking at their remaining lifetime. If she understands, the logic is simple. She'll just need to use a few more brain cells until she remembers that she once saw her own lifetime numbers on the day she almost went to a better place. Now he asks her to focus on seeing the numbers above her head, telling her to slowly close her eyes and focus on the numbers at the top of her head. This way she sees a 9 and a 4, but she gets startled and the numbers vanish, saying they appear as if they're floating on some kind of glass. Ignoring her strange talk, the number asks her to choose the gun on the right or the left. The girl chooses the one on the left and he points it at her head. Seeing the numbers counting down in seconds, she asks him to stop. She screams that they're going down, and when he checks, the gun was indeed loaded. Jay asks if he was trying to shoot her or just testing her skills. He says there's always a risk in everything, but as long as she can see the number, it will be easy to figure out the truth. Now he tells her to apply this method to every action she takes from now on. That way she'll be able to turn traps and dangers she couldn't see before. She'll be able to choose an ideal route to move safely. And taking pictures of their faces without getting caught will be very easy, even for a weak little girl like her. She still hasn't said she'll do it, and just like last time, she'll think of a way to save innocent lives. However, she's afraid of making a mistake and ending up in danger, and thus only being a burden to him, making him wish he had done this alone without her. He doesn't believe that and asks why she's worrying so much. Even if she messes up, his numbers won't change. Nothing will stop him from eliminating his targets as usual. So he tells her to stop worrying because his plans aren't so fragile that a little girl could ruin them. After that, they go to that extremely crowded street again, and we see the scared tattooed man. And behind him is obviously the Dark Knight, the man of the numbers, following him. The method the number uses is always to foresee the future, and Moji Hayan can also use her ability. He must avoid any decrease in the numbers. If one of those numbers changes, it means he failed to take down one of his planned targets, and failing to eliminate them also means failing to save innocent lives, lives of civilians that could have been protected by him. After all this, the number knows better than anyone that he cannot compromise his beliefs. Not even the smallest chance can make him let the numbers drop, because just a single drop, and the number could inevitably mark a final deadline. And it's at that moment, after a cat knocks over a can, that the tattooed man finds him and starts beating him. The two start an intense and aggressive knife fight. After dodging some blows, the tattooed man says he's a bit better than he expected. Then he asks who he is and who it is this time that's after him. The comic book hero fan takes off his mask to say something to him. This encounter marks the second time the anti-hero faced a deadline. Suddenly, the henchman and the tattooed guy enter the place, scaring everyone, ordering his men to violently throw everyone out, and also telling them to throw the manager out. So while they're beating people, the guys start looking for their white-haired manager, beginning to search together with his men for the manager who must be hiding. While they all beat several men until they find a white-haired man. All messed up, the man asks who they are and why they're doing all this. The man who looks like a Yakuza does an oral exam on him, except using a knife. On the floor, the manager begs him to spare his life and not send him underground. The tattooed man finds him interesting and asks if he's begging the knife or begging him. The guy cries, and there's no more time before he turns into nothing but ketchup. Dead serious, the tattooed Yakuza says he did a good job and asks who those people were. To the man in the suit, it was nothing more than another job he didn't care about. Meanwhile, the little girl manages to take photos of 7 of his henchmen, collecting pictures of these lunatics like she's hunting Pokemon, figuring they're the ones who haven't left the office yet, but will have to go home at some point. Entire days have passed since she started moving on her own, but she still hasn't had the chance to use her new ability. Even though she's tried to follow the ideal path, her numbers still haven't changed. But she understands that he said some things about how taking risks can sometimes be important, thus making it easier to detect changes in the numbers. Meanwhile, the serial killer and the Yakuza keep going at each other, beating each other up non-stop, trading clean hits, but neither can land a blow because they're both too good. While the tattooed man has no doubt he's facing a professional, obviously he's Batman. He knows he must have done sports, combat, and even mental games like chess or gambling. Anything involving systems with winners and losers he must know. When to attack, when to defend, and even which vital points to strike. He wonders if there's something nearby he can use to gain an advantage, whether to cut or strike, or to dodge or defend, all taken into consideration to gain the upper hand over his opponent. However, there's something that doesn't feel right to him, because it's practically impossible for him to have the advantage since the start of the fight. No matter how fast he reacts, he's destined to always be one step behind his moves. Yet he still wonders why it feels like the gap between their strikes is shrinking. It feels like he's even one step ahead of him now. After all, Batman is prepared. Instead of dodging after an attack from the tattooed man, it seems like he anticipates his move and dodges before he even attacks. However, he starts to think this is crazy, and little does he know the anti-hero has his Sharingan eye activated. What the number is doing is simple. If his number increases, it means he's on the right path. But if it reaches 0, it means he made a mistake. The only difference is that he applies his method to every action he takes, like a machine. While they need to use their eyes to observe other people's numbers, they usually don't need to look at their own numbers, but they are visible in their minds. The decisions they make lead to specific futures, and the numbers reflect their future. All these factors are processed within seconds in the emo superhero's brain. Therefore, the ideal path is created when a number can't be changed. It's at that moment he finally manages to land a hit on the tattooed guy, finally injuring him and then immediately landing a huge kick to his chest. This goes beyond the understanding of an ordinary person, but the number developed this system, which proves in practice that it works as soon as he knocks the guy to the ground. Knowing the maniac's name is Choi Chong-kuk, number 33. After finishing this man, he'll be able to save the lives of 33 innocents. It's at that moment that the genius Albert Einstein realizes he's the number's criminal. He starts laughing because everything begins to make sense in his head, including the fact that he had foreseen the future. He then says he's just like that albino person. That alone makes our protagonist recall war memories from so much trauma. His face turns completely blank, triggering his trauma. Meanwhile, the girl starts running away from some tattooed thugs working for the guy. She even ends up cornered by them. They offer her a fry, saying it will be Moji Hayan's last meal. Our protagonist, stuck in war memories, grabs the man by the collar and tells him to repeat what he said about the albino girl who could see numbers just like him. Then the Yakuza man starts having a flashback of a very violent day, where that albino girl was beating up a bunch of people. Staring at her, the tattooed man says he lost his job because she arrived first and took out his targets. He then asked who she was and if she was also there to do a job. She explained that she was there because all those men she just wiped out had beaten up children in the street. They used violence, and she even thought he might be part of that group, asking him in a bizarre way if he was part of the group of good people. Then he explains to our anti-hero that this happened in China when they had the same target. But that was years ago. He doesn't know exactly who the girl is. Taking advantage of the moment when the number is in shock upon hearing this, the guy hits him with a brick, a real cheap shot. Even if he knew where the woman was, he wouldn't tell, and then he pushes him away. Our protagonist immediately becomes alert and notices the number above the man's head changing. He knows he's strained his eyes a lot in a short period, using them several times. Seeing the man plan his escape, and thinking about the fact that he met that albino woman in China who caused him trauma, he knows that now that he's escaped, he must be heading to his home or his office. In the car, fleeing with his goons, he starts putting on some bandages. They ask the boss if he's okay and who did this to him. The moment he says it was the number's criminal, everyone is shocked. At that moment, he calls Jun Byom, the man in the suit he spoke with earlier. On the phone, he tells him they caught a rat that had been sneaking around and spying on them since the other day. At first, he was confused because she seemed like just a normal young girl, until he remembered she's the daughter of the psychopath Mo Hyun-chil, who disappeared along with the number. That makes perfect sense to the boss, who starts laughing and finds it all interesting. He then says he's being chased by the number right at that moment, ordering his men to take their usual positions and be ready. The number goes after him and has no intention of letting him escape. It's been years since he had any lead on the albino woman. The tattooed man says they should give the serial killer number a proper welcome. After a long drive, he finally arrives at their base without making a sound. As soon as he enters a room, he notices the girl being held by Junbyeom and the boss sitting in a chair. Seeing that he managed to reach them, they welcome the number. He assumes she must be very special to him since she's the only survivor he spared and took with him. He tells him to duel, where the winner keeps the girl, and he can leave without her, alive. But of course, if he refuses the proposal, the girl is gone. However, surprising everyone, he says he refuses and the man can do whatever he wants, saying he doesn't care what happens to that girl and that, in fact, he's doing him a favor. The girl gets very sad when she hears this, and they are left confused. But several of his goons show up at that moment. The Yakuza guy says that if he lets fear take over, he's done for, and he knows what to do, saying the only way to survive his men is by attacking them. But the guys say that no matter how strong he is, he's only got 2 arms, and they're a crowd. If each one of them lands a hit, they can stab him at least 15 times. That's the deal the goons make with the boss. Our protagonist tells him to refresh his memory in the meantime because he has many questions for the guy. As soon as he remembers everything and he's done defeating them all, he says the boss will have to answer all his questions. Meanwhile, the tattooed guy orders them to end the child's life. However, Moji Hayan activates her ocular ability. She remembers him talking about taking necessary risks and then saying he refused the boss's offer, saying that they would even be doing him a favor. All of this pushed the girl to want to survive. The conversation where he said he would help her understand the difference in the numbers and make choices that would prolong her life. Remembering everything he taught her, she wonders what she should choose in a situation like this. Meanwhile, the Yakuza tattooed guy orders them to kill Moji Hayan. She gets scared when our protagonist points a gun at her and seems like he's going to shoot. Her ocular ability active, she wonders if she made the right choice. After all, the number is high, and she takes the shot, falling back but staying alive. Then he starts firing again, and the Yakuza guy wonders if he was bluffing when he picked up the gun. After that, a henchman strikes his hand, making him drop his firearm. But since Batman is prepared, he grabs a sharp weapon to strike this boss's soldier. Meanwhile, another henchman grabs our protagonist's gun and gets ready to fire, even taking a shot at the number. But nothing seems to happen to him. He only feels the impact. Then he tells him to shoot again. At this moment, the girl is still tied up and starts running away. At the same time, the protagonist attacks non-stop and takes down several henchmen. He notices a girl fleeing, and the boss orders Jin to go after her. When our protagonist scans the henchmen, noticing there are still 15 left, he comments that his Kevlar vest covers from his neck down to his thigh, which protects the main vital points. 2 individuals with 1 or 0 numbers cannot be eliminated by him. But just as he's thinking about all this, the boss comes to attack him. Our anti-hero manages to block and then tries to strike him, failing, and several henchmen show up to help their boss. At that moment, the number increases to 16, and he realizes it's a troublesome gang. They don't back down or fall from just a few cuts. Each of them comes at the number with everything they got, leaving him with no options. While they form a sort of barrier, the boss attacks to catch the man off guard. Again, he starts to feel that pain from overusing his eye. Then he takes a bait and strike to the head from one of the henchmen, making him remember the albino girl telling him to give up because he was too weak. At that moment, he disarms one of the soldiers and ends his life right there. Keeping count, he says that was the 4th and asks the man if he has any last words or wishes. After saying nothing, he ends another man's life while Moji is running away with everything she's got. Seeing that at one of the doors, her lifespan remains the same, she knows she should take the middle one. As soon as she enters it, the girl notices something on the wall, and the man chasing her loses sight of her. Everything inside this room seems to shorten her lifespan a little, making her think she chose a path with no return. But 2 giant metal doors keep her lifespan high. However, no matter what she does, her remaining time doesn't go beyond 3 minutes. Wondering what to do, she ends up cornered. Meanwhile, the girl remembers the man saying her number changed to 1 before she was eliminated. Somehow, she still managed to change that and make the number decrease. And she remembers the moment when he went crazy because her presence meant something very different to him. After recalling all this, the henchman Jin enters the room she's in. The man with glasses expects her to know he can't spare her life after this. After all, this is what happens when a child like her gets involved with a man as bad as him. And besides that, he comments on the fact that she's also the daughter of another serial killer. At that moment, the girl pulls a fire extinguisher hose from the wall, spraying water in this henchman's face to make him stop chasing her. While she says that none of this would have happened in her life if it weren't for people like him. Suddenly, the man notices an open fuse box behind him. Realizing she's trying to get him electrocuted through the fuse box, a huge puddle forms on the ground, and the fuse box short circuits, until the lights in the whole place go out because of this short in the electrical system. The man feels relieved to have survived as he came close to being electrocuted. Realizing that for the first time, the girl's decision wasn't based solely on numbers. Every move she made had been calculated carefully. Then the protagonist realizes she can actually do this. Damn rascal. The goons and the boss get startled when the lights suddenly go out. He starts ordering everyone to turn on their phone flashlights, but before they can do anything, the killer takes advantage of being in the shadows. He begins cleaning up the place, taking out the goons. Finally, he even takes the crime boss's life. And this decision allowed the number to move freely, exactly as he pleased, as if there were no solid logic to prove. Yet every time she heard an explanation for one of the questions stuck in her mind. After all, the man had said the numbers never change unless the person is about to be eliminated. So she questions why the numbers keep changing all the time, moment after moment, as if they were alive. How can something that should never change keep changing just because you think about what to do next? She remembers the serial killer talking about her having changed the number before being eliminated, which is a ridiculous question, even if it's simple. After all, that's all she needs to do if she doesn't want to be eliminated, and there's no need to question it so much. However, it's true that she can change numbers that should never change. This is proven at the moment our protagonist starts taking the lives of several henchmen. At the moment the lights go out, and he is able to use his eyes to see and attack them. Then all this means he can also reach future prediction through numbers. Intercept destiny because of it as well. Once again, we see the moment when the protagonist starts attacking them all in the dark, because this decision allowed the number to move freely, exactly as he wanted. The only thing she could do was buy herself more time, thus extending her lifespan enough to shape the future the way she needs. And the number could also take out his enemies however he wished. Meanwhile, the number wipes out the crime boss's henchmen, attacking them one by one with his special vision, which allows him to do all this in the dark. When the crime boss hears all his men being taken out, he already knows he'll be next. Then he attacks him, saying they should start from the beginning and try again. He begins recording a tape and states the man's name, Choi Chong-huk, and the number of victims, 33. Grabbing his injured neck, he says that by eliminating him, he will be fulfilling someone else's wish. However, he will grant him the same right to have a final wish that he can carry out for him, saying he can make one wish as long as it's within his power to fulfill it. He says this is the last chance to tell him everything he knows about the albino woman who can also see numbers. The girl hears this conversation, and the boss wants to know what happens if his wish is to stay alive. Our protagonist says that's not possible because if he survives, he will end up taking the lives of 33 innocents one day. That's the reason he must take the man's life, so the civilians can continue their lives normally. The man starts laughing, finding it a joke, as he has never met anyone so ignorant in his life, telling our protagonist that it makes no sense at all, saying his men won't stop just because they suddenly stop getting orders from him. If one blade breaks, they simply replace it. Our protagonist says it's impossible to break all those blades, but he can't just sit and do nothing while watching him reap innocent lives. He then asks angrily when the incident in China happened, and how he discovered that the woman could see numbers. The boss says she is in Korea at this very moment, and takes advantage of our protagonist's outrage to try to take his life. However, his knife goes flying as the protagonist had already noticed the movement and threw it away. Before dying, he says it's going to be a war between the lunatics who can see numbers, and tells him that if he struggled this much against the boss, he doubts he will survive a real fight against those people. Right after that, the boss is gone, and he stops speaking, leaving a heavy atmosphere in the air. Noticing the girl is behind him, he says it's time to leave. Moji asks what they should do with the man in glasses, and the protagonist says his number is 0, saying they can't eliminate him because of that. Then the girl asks if he's okay with all of this. She also says she moved according to the numbers the way he taught her. She even discovered something new, but before she could tell him, something happened. Our protagonist falls down the stairs as his brain reaches its limit. In response, he begins to sink deep into the corners of his mind, deeper and deeper into his buried memories of his mysterious origin, remembering a day in the classroom when the albino girl appeared, excited about the arrival of a new classmate. The albino girl asked for his real name. However, the protagonist told her he didn't have a name yet. It all started 19 years ago, before the number incident that ruined his life. He wonders when he had his first memory again. He remembers opening his eyes and trying to understand where he was. A memory that happened a long time ago. No matter how much he tries to remember, he's already forgotten. He can't recall anything before that day. An older woman was helping him as he was collapsing on the street, freezing to death, asking if he'd like to come with her and offering genuine help. He wonders if, that day, he took her hand or not. Somehow, he found a book hidden under the desk. It was a kind of comic book about a mysterious hero that he immediately started reading, several parts that even seemed like his life in the future. At that moment, the albino girl appeared and asked if he was enjoying the book. She said she had found a secret place where she got all those books. but he couldn't tell the teacher because she got in big trouble last time they found out. Our protagonist promised he wouldn't tell anyone, and then she asked how old he was, but he doesn't even remember how old he was in that memory, telling her he was between 5 and 6 years old, and she also didn't know his name. The woman at the school told him that was normal for boys his age who had gone through trauma. The teachers would eventually give him a name along with the other students. The girl thinks she's been the strange type ever since she started using the name she got at that orphanage. Either way, he would probably be in class 1 on the first floor, and she was on the second floor and said he could call her Nuna. So the boy asked what her name was, and she said it was Soa. He asked if he could meet her again to read her comics. Soa said he could, as long as he stopped treating her so formally. Beneath some low vegetation and thick grass, there was a path through the mountain that led to a very quiet place. There, a small school offered shelter to 27 students and 4 teachers. The children were divided between the first and second floors. That school and dormitory seemed straight out of a fairy tale, completely sealed off from another world. It was there that he spent his childhood. The kids started calling him Da'am at the time. This friend invited him to have lunch with everyone else while he was buried in his comic book. 16 years before the number incident, showing that some time passed between one memory and the next. Our protagonist was reading an English dictionary he had taken from the library. Saying it had the same letters as a book he wanted to read, he started learning English. The boy said he was smart, that he couldn't read anything when he first arrived at the place. At that moment, a bully bumped into him, knocking his book to the ground. They demanded an apology from him, but the bully said nothing. This friend of the protagonist insisted on an apology since he had bumped into him while cutting in line. The bully didn't apologize, and the protagonist said it was fine. Then he stared at a girl and asked her to serve him soup. The girl said she could only serve food in the order of arrival, saying that since he had cut in line, she couldn't serve him like that. The teacher had said that anyone who tried to cut in line wouldn't get to eat. The protagonist's friend thanked the girl for what she did. After that, he ate a lot, as his friends recommended, since they would have physical education class, also telling him to be careful not to get hurt afterward. The memories get blurry. Sometimes the school looks run down, other times it looks normal. In addition, he trained with weapons alongside his friends to become strong, and they were well indoctrinated by the teachers there. Everyone exercised a lot for a long time. The teacher encouraged them to give their best, and the protagonist began getting stronger at that time, training to become a ninja in the future, obviously. They trained very hard, fought each other, and even used knives. They were also advised not to leave the school. The kids would get into serious fights, choke each other, and more. They were told that the people outside were very immature and foolish, and that those people would never understand the mission of the children there. They said they couldn't be tempted by the outside world and by the ignorant. The teacher of class 1 understood how difficult and painful their lives had been before arriving at the school. The pain each of them had suffered was slightly different, but the suffering they experienced was not the fault of any of them. War, poverty, and survival of the fittest. That's why the world is in ruins, armored by greed, and people don't even realize they are marching toward destruction. That is precisely the reason why Great Mother Charlotte built this orphanage. While they trained in shooting, they also heard the words of this mother goddess. The mother goddess said that even if they abandoned themselves, she would embrace all fools and lead them to the future. All evildoers and heretics who tried to stop this would be dealt with by her apostles and disciples. All the students with bright eyes and strange expressions were those disciples with incredible potential. Those who would defeat villains alongside the mother goddess to change the world. Perhaps they could even become children like them, with good hearts. For that to happen, they would have to pay attention to what the teacher said and study hard. After all that strange talk, it was lunchtime, and her expression changed, making it seem almost like a normal school. She asked the class representatives to lead the greetings. One of the protagonist's friends was wrapping his own hand after training because it was so intense, saying it was the kind of injury you inevitably got during the academy. After the afternoon and the end of academy classes, he always had an hour of rest. The lights went out at 10:30, and he remembers that some teacher stayed awake at night watching over them, locking all the windows and doors so they couldn't leave. Considering the security camera system installed all over the place, escaping or sneaking around the orphanage at night was practically impossible. Of course, none of those children even tried to go outside during the night. At night, they would talk among themselves and ask if what the teacher said was really true. He doubted it, but the teacher said that even if they doubted, the more they learned, the more their eyes would open to the truth. And that was strange, because it wasn't how it appeared in the comic books and magazines he read. His friend said he had been acting weird lately because of the girl on the second floor, even though our protagonist denied it, and he kept reading his comic books nonstop. The story of a masked hero who fought against a crime boss pig. This concept of hero and villain always stuck in the boy's head as he read the magazines. He remembered what the teacher had said about those who would defeat villains to help the mother goddess change the world. At that moment, the white-haired girl took the books from his hand. Our protagonist asked what Nuana was doing. Right then, the owner of the school appeared, saying she had left her bag behind. That's when he understood why his friend had hidden the books and pretended they were studying. The woman's only advice was not to skip dinner to study, but she was happy to see them there. The girl got irritated with him because he had almost been caught again for being too immersed in his books. Another year passed at that orphanage, reaching 15 years before the numbers incident. Again, his friend was scolding him because he needed to be more careful and had almost been caught again. And that would make it even harder for them to go outside. After all, it was very difficult for her to steal those things in secret and not get caught. He asked if the next time she went outside, she could take him with her. Nuna didn't mind him coming along. She just wanted to understand why all of a sudden, our protagonist wanted to see what was in that place with those piles of books beyond the comics. He didn't just want to keep hearing it from the teachers, he wanted to check the outside world for himself. When his friend heard him talking about seeing the world for himself, he even considered going the same day. She did some calculations and said they could go that very night. Seeing his reaction, she asked why he was backing out if he was the one who wanted this. Nuna said the conditions for that day were good, and after that, they would have to wait another 9 days. After she asked if he wanted to go, the boy waited until nightfall. He placed a pile of clothes and a basketball under the blanket to pretend he was sleeping. And he woke up at exactly 2 in the morning to carry out the plan. Then she would go to the first floor, and he should leave the dormitory door open. However, if he did that carelessly, the teacher on night watch could catch him. He always wondered how she managed to come and go without being caught if the doors and windows were locked. That day, he saw her coming down the stairs from the second floor to the first, warning the girl that the teacher was very close to them, asking him to wait a little and then slip through. However, the albino girl walked right in front of the teacher with glasses without a care, noticing that the teacher was drugged and that there was something in her tea. So they left together in the middle of the night without any problem. In the memory of the past, the boy was shocked to see his teacher drugged, while Nuana hurried him to get outside quickly. However, all the windows were locked as well as the doors. She said the teachers usually lock the corridor doors and the bathroom windows, but there was one door they locked and then forgot about, the storage room door. She had secretly replaced the lock with one she could open herself. The boy wondered how she managed to change the locks. However, she didn't exactly remember how. She just found it and thought it might be useful later. She would take some things from the teacher's office when they weren't around and find some useful stuff there. There was also a place in the basement that looked like a laboratory. That's where she found the drug she used in the teacher's tea. She tested it by mixing small doses into the teacher's coffee, and the social studies teacher was the most careless. So it had to be when she was on night shift along with the full moon, which only happened on Monday and Tuesday. If it wasn't on those days, they would have to wait a long time to do it again. While hearing all this explanation, the boy got a bit upset and told Nuana to wait, asking if it was really right to do this since the teacher could get seriously hurt. The girl said she had tested it a few times, and the teacher would be fine. She probably wouldn't even remember what happened the next day. Then she told him to be careful when jumping because the drop there was higher than it looked. When they reached a certain spot, they stopped moving because of the security cameras. After all, they all rotated to cover blind spots, so they had to move at the moment when none of the cameras were covering the area. Now he was asking if it was time yet, since they were facing the other way, and the girl told him to wait a bit longer. Then she explained the order in which the cameras covered the places and how many seconds they stayed. It was a boring, nerdy explanation that didn't matter much. She explained that the next blind spot would happen in many seconds when the cameras were no longer pointed there, saying they should wait about 3 minutes for that to happen. Our protagonist asked how many times she had gone back and forth to be able to calculate the entire camera pattern. She said it was about 600 times, but the point was that she didn't calculate. She could somehow see it. She said she had roamed the school since she was a child and imagined all that security was already because of her. But no matter what they tried, they couldn't stop her explorer spirit. They could block her, but she would find a way to get around it and keep exploring, until they started putting people on night watch, which got in her way. She noticed the boy wouldn't stop thinking about the state they had left the teacher in, and our protagonist revealed he was startled by the affection on her face. They continued learning that everyone there had been blessed in the same way by the mother goddess. Aside from training moments, no one in that orphanage could hurt one another, and they learned that the people outside were bad and that they shouldn't leave or disobey the teachers. Then she hugged her friend and said that just as Doam said, it could be dangerous to do this. She commented that if this drug was so dangerous, she questioned why the teachers had it in the first place, and also to a place where children are not allowed to enter. She asks if he also feels that there's something strange about that place, that being one of the reasons why he wants to go with her to see the outside world. He questions if hitting others is wrong, then the character in his comic book is also bad for hitting villains. However, the protagonist thinks not, because the villains started doing bad things first. Then the girl says the teachers did the same by locking them up, and that's why she does what she can. If they are bad people, then it's fine to do bad things to them too. After that, she stands up, as there are only 20 seconds left to cross the area, pointing to a tree that he must run to within 10 seconds. She asks if Dylan knows that, besides Class 1 and Class 2, there's an honor class for those with certain talent. Next year, she will graduate from Class 2 and move to the honor class. She says that if he has that same talent and meets those conditions, he can enter that room. If that happens, she will tell him everything about what she plans to do, and about the plans she's making. She will tell him everything with no exceptions. At that moment, he had already started manifesting his ocular ability with numbers. Looking back, he thinks it started that day. He can't remember completely. Maybe it was a little later. He even thinks it was much later, after things went downhill. He can't be too specific, but he knew he couldn't interfere too much. As obvious as it seems now, looking back at the time, he thought it was just a trick of his eyes. When it came to numbers and their meanings, he began to notice them clearly 1 year after the manifestation, reaching the date of 14 years before the numbers incident happening now. Then the owner of the place appears to say it's been half a year since they arrived in Class 2. That's why she will hold a counseling session for the first time in a long while with the science teacher. As she calls the students' names, they go to the counseling room. First, they call number 1, who is the protagonist's friend Han Gyeol, admitted there 7 years ago. He has a high ranking because he's good at training, shooting, and academics. The science teacher says that among his peers, he has shown himself to be the most motivated. Han Gyeol says he did all that because he wanted to be special. He always wanted to enter the honor class and graduate as one of the top-ranked students. That way he could work directly alongside the mother goddess. And now he understands that if it weren't for the teachers and friends, he wouldn't know how precious and special he is. He would have been ignored and mistreated by his father, eventually withering away and losing his purpose. Meanwhile, another girl is accused of lacking motivation. It's her 5th year since admission. Among her peers, she's at the top in many aspects, but deep down, when it comes to training, she's asked if she's afraid of hurting others and punishing evil in the name of the mother goddess. The girl says it's not that. She just prefers to study a lot and be useful, and she understands that compared to her peers, she's weak. Next comes Kang Chang, who is in his 6th year since admission. He has a poor mind for academics but makes up for it in training. They ask if he has any physical problems, burning eyes, or constant headaches. Meanwhile, the science teacher notes down the symptoms of eye premonition. Right away, our protagonist says he feels all that frequently, and is also in his 6th year since admission. He says those sensations started about a year ago. His teacher wishes he had mentioned this earlier, and also asks if he's ever seen something like numbers. At that exact moment, our protagonist sees the number 11 above the man's head. Remembering what his friend said about students with special talents going to the honor class, she had said the requirements were very strict and few people would get in. The boy wasn't entirely sure if it was a number, but it looked like a heat wave moving around. Soon the teacher filled out the boy's form, noting that he felt the symptoms of premonition. After finishing the questions, he realizes the boy is the last in line, so he tells him to return to the classroom and bring some children for him to examine, asking him to take the other students to the science lab in the basement. The teacher says that this year's harvest is good. Then he took all the students who had gone before him to that laboratory. The best boy in the class didn't even know there was an underground corridor like that, and the girl could smell something foul. When the bully asked, our protagonist said the place was to the right, seeing the number 2 above the men's heads and the number 1 above the girl's head. It had already been a year since he had started seeing the numbers without knowing their meaning. By this point, he already knew how to freely control when the numbers appeared and disappeared from his vision. The reason he had deliberately hidden this was after seeing the teacher's reaction, which seemed desperate. He thought that merely saying he had seen something would be enough to get him into the honor class. However, he realized far too late what was really happening there. Seeing his science teacher with a man tied up and covered in tomato sauce, telling the students there were always bad people like this out there, desperate to find something they could take for themselves, sneaking through the forest to secretly film their orphanage. That's why this teacher always told them to be careful when moving outside the building, asking everyone there who would start and placing a firearm on the table. The completely insane teacher said the first person to shoot would be accepted into the honor class immediately, saying that at such a close distance, they didn't have to worry about missing the shot, grabbing the girl's shoulder, saying she was too afraid, so she should be the first to shoot, encouraging her to do this madness because at some point, she had said she would have the courage to do it. He began to manipulate her, asking if what she had said about wanting to become stronger like the others was a lie. Typical of mad scientists, he made the girl start aiming at the man in the suit, pushing her to do it, then pointing the gun at the bald bully's head, saying that now she didn't need to hesitate anymore and could shoot at once. Even knowing this was a process for her, because by overcoming the instinct of fear, her spirit would grow stronger, forcing her to commit this crime or else he would end her classmate's life. At that moment, the number 1 appeared above her head in our protagonist's vision, and she began to cry. However, it wasn't her who fired, It was another boy who had snatched the gun from her hands, shooting the man who was tied up with a sack over his head, leaving our protagonist with trauma for the rest of his life. After that, the number above the boy's head decreased to 1. Then he dropped the gun on the floor and asked if the test was already over, saying that if one candidate had already succeeded, then the test could end. But the science teacher started laughing and pulled back a curtain, saying there were still 3 people left from those caught spying on the orphanage, commenting again that whoever did it first would have the advantage, that the first to shoot and finish off these people would go straight to the honor class. If 2 of the 3 remained, he would do the same fun little jigsaw-style game, and he wouldn't send the last person back to class without promoting them to the honor class. If they thought they couldn't do it, he would help them the same way he had before. While he tortured the students, the albino girl was holding a firearm behind the door, making our protagonist hold a gun and shoot at rats. Looking back now, he realizes that wasn't even a test, since their 4 promotions had already been decided. That was discipline, and they were forced to experience heavy things and eliminate people, all to mold them into usable mental tools. They laid the groundwork for it, forcing our protagonist to shoot, or else his friend would pay the price. Meanwhile, behind the door, the albino girl was waiting to step in and have some fun. Knowing the new set of people was coming, she passed by just in case. Compared to the past, the teacher really hadn't changed anything for her. Even though it was earlier than expected, they knew it would be fine, even if they moved some things around. Then she started walking into the room with her gun in hand, counting the timing of the footsteps and their force. She knew it was the teacher with a motorcycle helmet, the one who did night patrol at the place and seemed to be able to sense her there, asking if she was just a student and from which floor and class she was. Knowing she must be the one who stole the training pistol and swapped it for a fake. Not even in the man's shadow, she begins aiming to hit him, but he turns off the lights and activates the emergency ones. Then he runs past extremely fast, making her fire in desperation. The shots hit the glass, and the science teacher notices there's someone there. In addition, the shots pierce the man's helmet, except he had used the helmet as bait and wasn't actually hit, revealing his face and pulling out his firearm against her. But just as he's about to shoot, the science teacher opens the door to check the situation. The girl gets cover from the door, and the man accidentally fires. The bullets are darts that almost hit the teacher. He then asks why the teacher is without a helmet and doing all this. The man finds a white hair from the albino girl and says nothing important, and asks how the promotion ceremony for the new class is going. In response, the science teacher says everything's great, they just finished the approval process. With all the students exhausted and traumatized for life, our protagonist can't clearly remember how he returned to the dormitory. Something between vision and reason made him feel as if there were a white film over the whole scene. After they returned for about a week, no one said anything, and the numbers he saw above each other's heads began disappearing one by one. After that, the teacher said the 4 new students for the honor class had arrived. They switched classes and were introduced to the new room with 3 others who had already been there. Now all of them would be classmates in honor class, making a total of 7 students, one of them being the albino girl, friend of our future anti-hero. He went up to the rooftop like a zombie and found Nuna there. They meet on the rooftop and she gives him the new volume of the comic he's a fan of, a gift for joining her class, saying it took her a lot of effort to steal another edition of that comic for him, commenting that it's been 6 years since they first met, and now they'll finally be able to see each other every day. But the boy is still traumatized by the visions that led him to the honor class and begins vomiting. The boy even gets a little irritated with her, and the white-haired girl helps him pull himself together, asking him if he can also see the numbers just like she can. After all, she understands he must have a special ability since she also sees the same thing. Our protagonist is impressed that his friend can also see numbers like him. She says she was going to explain everything to him once he entered the honor class. However, in her case, when she looks at someone, she sees the number of people that person will save in the future. People in danger, she can see how many lives they will rescue. After that, she tells they can destroy the orphanage and take down the teachers to be free. Together, just the 2 of them could easily do it and become heroes. Just like in the comics he reads about the guy in the crow outfit. The boy is shocked to understand that the numbers she sees are about people to be saved. Then she asks how many people the 2 of them could save in the future if they work together. And then she asks what kind of numbers sees in his vision. But the protagonist becomes upset, not understanding what she means by saving people like a hero. He then asks how she knows what her numbers mean. The girl doesn't answer and instead asks if he doesn't know what his own numbers mean yet. She hadn't expected that and asks him to remember clearly again. The very first moment when the numbers he saw changed. He knows that for over a year, the numbers hadn't changed at all. They began to drop one by one at that moment the day before. Then the girl asks if anything comes to his mind, and he sees an exorbitant number above her head. He then asks if Nuana is serious about burying the teachers. The girl smiles and says yes, because it's going to be easier than he thinks. In the end, they want to cultivate children who are voluntarily loyal to them. They don't try to subdue them by force or control them physically. After all, at first they act like a family, building bonds and connections like good teachers. And after they make them dependent on that sense of belonging, they force the children to commit crimes and trample their own essence so that they can never take their own initiative again. None of those teachers are anything special. If you look beneath the layers, they're just ordinary people. Ordinary people who won't survive if they're hit while sleeping. Our protagonist feels disgusted hearing her frightening plan. Nuina says her only problem is the teacher who wears a motorcycle helmet. She doesn't think she can deal with that teacher alone and has tried snooping around the place. So she forms a plan to be carried out on November 17 of the following year. It's the only day of the year when the helmet teacher will be on vacation. First, they must take out all the remaining teachers and seize control of the orphanage. Second, deal with the helmet teacher when he returns the day after his vacation. Finally, find the person who established the orphanage, the mother goddess Charlotte, and ultimately tear her from her position, her facilities, and her connections. The helmet guy and the goodbye to mother won't be easy to face alone, but the fact that they met while reading comics that day, and the fact that they have special superpowers is something she calls destiny. That's why she extended her hand to him and asked him to join her in this plan, so they could defeat the villains and become heroes together. A beautiful, wholesome romance story. The boy sat on the floor and thought for a long time, then asked if that was the reason she wanted him to go to the honor class. After all, during the promotion ceremony, she wanted him to see just how bad the teachers were in practice, and at the same time take someone's life, so he would now be capable of doing the same to the teachers alongside her. In truth, she says that wasn't his real intention. However, being in the honor class, he could learn more about his eye superpower. The teachers want them to develop individuality even if they have no expectations for the honor class students. But if a student with an ability shows up, it's like they hit the lottery. Our protagonist asks if his friend also had to eliminate someone during her ceremony. He can't get out of his head the things he learned that were ways to hurt and kill people. For him, it was just knowledge to reach a high ranking and avoid getting scolded by the teachers at school. Our protagonist thought it was just stuff he had to know and never intended to use in practice. He imagines it's the same for the other students who always pretended to be rebellious, saying that he was the same way, always faking it and never thinking like that. Nuina says that if they all keep being like that, in the future they'll become as bad as the teachers. Our protagonist says he's going to run away soon, saying he won't interfere with the girl's plan and will escape with his friends when the opportunity comes. Then he hands her the comic book and gives it back, stating that he can't be a superhero like the crow from the comic. After that, he leaves, not knowing that in the future he'll end up exactly like the guy from the comic. Remembering this memory in the future, he gets angry at his past self, repeating over and over that he was wrong and should have gotten out of that situation, that he should have ended the girl's life right there, because the number above her head was very high and very suspicious. He should have understood that it was connected to the people she would eliminate in the future. He blames himself and thinks he should have questioned why she said she would destroy the orphanage, and the fact that she never mentioned wanting to take out the kids there as well. Remembering what she said about doing bad things to bad people, just like in the Crow comic. Nuina insisted it was easy to do that, and couldn't understand why Do-am didn't think like her. Thinking back to the past, the protagonist believes his younger self should have ended her that day. 1 year after that day, the helmet teacher left on his vacation day. The long-awaited November 17 arrived, and the girl took the gun and prepared to start the plan. All of this was 12 years before the number incident began as we see it now. Then came January 16 in the past. Our protagonist used the tricks he learned from Nuina when he was younger, secretly creating an escape route at the time. Detail by detail, he filled in the blanks on the mountain path map. He and Nuina stopped talking after that difficult conversation. It wasn't even out of anger or because of the fight, but the ambiguity became awkward and he couldn't handle it. Then came March 7 when his friends were dismissed from duty for that month. After that, his two friends had their numbers dropped to 0 with a few more crimes committed. And then he finally became certain of the meaning of the numbers he always saw. Shocked by the enormous number of people the albino girl was going to put an end to, he tried not to think about it because it was the lives of the students, and he tried not to care because it was a matter of survival. As the final deadline got closer, it was already July 28. Convincing his friends wasn't easy, and his friend became even more apathetic than before, and the bald one's violent behavior grew stronger and more noticeable. He couldn't explain it well, but he felt like everyone was broken in some way. In October, with little time left before November, he still didn't know whether Nuina would succeed with her plan or not. As for him, he just wanted to get as many children as possible out of that place during this time. He asked himself if he would be able to convince the other two friends from the honor class. Meanwhile, in the classroom, the teacher was evaluating Soa, the albino, and Da-um, our protagonist. The teacher told the red-haired student to be careful of the darkness in the hallway. Then she began explaining Da-um's plan and saying he was a strange boy with twisted talk, talking about the strange things he wrote in his diary that couldn't be his real feelings. The teacher said she knew that they didn't need to worry, and that she would speak with Da. She also asked to be informed if anything similar happened with his classmates, saying he needed to guide his peers to his side. However, the albino girl was able to hear everything through a listening device. She said it was a shame because it was a diary only she had been secretly reading, until finally November 16, 2012, arrived, the moment when the helmeted teacher began to leave and she prepared her revenge. This being 12 years before the number serial killer incident. In a chase, one of the teachers was already wounded, running after the girl with a gun in hand, shooting at Nuna, who didn't even have to move to dodge. She asked what was wrong, telling the teacher she should just discard her. Getting inside the woman's head, she said there's no way a pistol at this distance could miss her. The teacher shouted that she wouldn't get away with this. Mocking her, the girl began teaching her the proper way to shoot, using both hands and squeezing the trigger, saying it should be done slowly, as if inserting a needle. At that moment, she shot her teacher, and the number count dropped, indicating she had eliminated the woman. Her science teacher said she had learned very well, and began firing his own gun at her, commenting that he had taught the albino very well how to use weapons, but the girl managed to take cover behind a door to avoid the shots, counting each shot he fired until the point when he would be out of ammo. As soon as he tried to reload, the girl threw a lab coat at him, obstructing his view and rushing toward the long-haired teacher. She remembered telling that in the future they could save many people together. Only that could happen after eliminating the teachers first. Again, her number count dropped when she eliminated that teacher. Our protagonist heard the gunfire upstairs and realized her plan had begun, encouraging his friend to escape through the bedroom window while this was happening. The next moment, the white-haired girl was pointing a gun at the chubby teacher. The teacher revealed that she had been arrogant from the beginning until now. She thought a moderate amount of rebellion could be useful, which is why she allowed her to be that way. But in the end, she only betrayed the teacher and didn't understand the graciousness behind her upbringing. Nuna said she was doing well not admitting her mistakes even at the very end. She shouldn't abandon everything as if she had reached enlightenment. As a villain, she should cry and fight shamefully and horribly until the end of her life. Smiling, the girl asked for a bit of that chaos and catharsis. But someone appeared and put a knife to her neck to stop her. A student dressed in black clothes tried to prevent her from taking her revenge. The teacher apologized, saying she wasn't the only one who could see numbers in that sense. Another person appeared, pointing a gun at her, saying she wasn't the only one who could see the number. Seeing the two others who were always in the honor class now against her, asking what they were doing since she had been trying to save them. The girl with bangs finds it funny because no one asked her to do this. He said that graduating at the top was close, as was becoming a subordinate of the mother goddess. The teacher said that if it weren't for her ruining everything, things could have been different. Nuna begins thinking about the Crow comic book, carrying out his revenge against the villains. She realized that all the students had already been contaminated by the strange indoctrination of that school, thinking that maybe it was too late to bring them back to their senses. That's why she now considers them villains too and points her gun at them. It was at that moment that she began shooting at the students she grew up with, leaving our protagonist and his friend frightened, making them set up a barricade against the door so she wouldn't break in. He said he kept watching the window and noticed it was blocked. His red-haired friend appeared, pointing a gun at and asking him to stop and go slowly, saying that all of them had been played for fools by Nuna.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.